Good morning and welcome to Super GT Round 8 at the Nurburgring GP circuit in the Nordschleife Mountains, Eifel Mountains of Germany, where the Super GT grid is supporting the Nurburgring 24 hours race, which will be commencing later this afternoon. Here we see a admittedly fairly small group of cars due to the early start setting off around the track with GCP Bambi the only current runner in Super GT 300, but he does love that Impreza, and as we've seen in previous performances, if the rain does come down, which it could do, he might well be on for a genuine podium against even the GT 500 machinery. As ever, we have the German driver of RS96 looking to continue his winning streak. Obviously he missed the last round at Suzuka circuit, but returning again, it will be great to see just what he can do. A series debutant, Memto 89, in the famous Concrete Climax livery, in the HSV 010. He will be competing in the Nurburgring 24 hours that will be starting later this afternoon, but now he's just getting himself warmed up on a new piece of kit just to keep himself sharp for the race. Already we have Glenn Els coming into the pit lane, so I don't know if that was perhaps a braking misjudgment and damage. Yes, I'm joined today by Luke Chillingsworth. So Luke, what are your feelings about this race?
Well, thank you very much, John. Yes, hello and welcome everyone at home. It's the Nurburgring 24 hours day, but before that we've got 3 hours of exciting Super GT action for the final round of the core-powered Super GT Championship. And just as you said there, John, it should be a very exciting race indeed, because of course the Championship really has gone down to the wire this time around. TNR 5 Ziggin and TNR Rebellion drawing on points 45 apiece heading into the final round here this morning for that one. It is actually still possible for future F1 to win the championship in the GT 500 class. He's just 5 points behind, so some serious issues for 5 Ziggin and Rebellion, and then a race win for future F1 could see him still clinch the title. But apart from that, it does appear that the two TNR boys look on top in terms of qualification is concerned. They'll be on top for the qualifying here to try and grab those championship winning positions, which could mean the difference between winning the championship and not winning the championship. In terms of the GT300 class, it's concerned Philo is on top with that one. He's currently on 42 points and is still also in chance to win the championship as well. He's just 3 points behind the two leading GT500 drivers, and of course being in that 300 car, he's shown some good form throughout the course of the championship so far, so could he perhaps try and grab some victories in that one as well?
Yes, it's important to remember that 5 Ziggin isn't actually here today, so the battle for this GT 500 championship is going to be purely between this man, Future F1, and TNR Rebellion. Obviously, Future has a 5-point deficit, as you mentioned, but as you said, it is just a mistake by TNR Rebellion or an early disconnect, and it could well see Future claiming the title. Unfortunately,
Well,
due
yeah,
to
it
the
really has. Because it's come down to this close in the wire, of course. It's a shame that 5 Ziggin can't be here to try and grab that championship, because he has shown some great form so far throughout the championship. He got second place, of course, last time out at Suzuka, a third place at to Suzuka before that. So he has shown some great form throughout the course of the championship, and it's a shame that he can't be here to try and grab himself that championship. 2 wins so far this season, compared to, of course, to TNR Rebellion's 1 victory taking place in the second round of the series. But just as you said, John, the championship going down to the wire here, and it's between Future F1 and TNR Rebellion for that GT 500 class. And funny enough, Future F1 hasn't actually won a race this year, or actually finished in second position. So if he won the championship, then that would be a very interesting scenario indeed.
he did actually win at Tsukuba, I believe.
Oh yeah, sorry, I missed that. Yeah, he did win actually in round number 4 of the championship. So he has won a race so far this season. So yeah, both of those drivers have won one race apiece, but TNR Rebellion, importantly, has had more second place finishes this year. But of course, future F1's consistency. He's got himself 3 podiums, chucking there a few fourth place finishes, and that's why he is so high up the standings.
Yes, indeed. Obviously, the TNR boys and Future have been the long-standing ones. We just spotted RS's car parked off the circuit, so I'm not sure what's going on with that. Perhaps he just feels that he's set a good enough lap, and that's it for him. But who knows? Certainly
Well, in
a
terms of the
150
run
flat.
provided for this race, we have got RS, who is currently on that provisional pole position. The German driver there has shown some good form so far in the core WEC. It'll be interesting to see what happens heading into the Nurburgring 24 hours this afternoon as well. Funny enough, Memto's also there. Now, Memto, one of the key runners in this afternoon's Nurburgring 24 hours for the Concrete Climax Racing team. It'll be interesting to see how they can do. Of course, the reigning champions of the Nurburgring 24, their closest rivals this afternoon, Poland 24, look to be in a good shape as well. So we definitely look forward to hearing what will happen there this afternoon as well between those two. But before we get there, we have got this exciting Super GT race, of which we still got 7.5 minutes of qualifying to go. Memto heading down into that hairpin now, and then it'll rise up the crest into the Schumacher S's. And so far, this hasn't been the best of qualifying sessions really for Memto. He is still there in 5th position. He perhaps would want to have been a bit higher up than that heading into this race. So it will be interesting to see what he can do heading into the final 7 minutes of this session. GTP Bambi's in the pit, so as well as TNR Rebellion. So have they now called an end to their qualification session? And also going on to the Nurburgring race this afternoon, the 24-hour race. Looking ahead to that now, some of these drivers are competing in this afternoon's race, most notably Glenn Owls and Memto, who both compete for the Concrete Climax Racing team. So it will be, Glenn Owls is for Reaper Racing, with Memto 89 for Concrete Climax Racing. But heading on to that, it'll be interesting to see how they do this afternoon. Will racing 3 hours this morning impact their chances of doing well in this afternoon's race because they've had sort of so long driving this morning and their tyres will start to hit in earlier on, or will it perhaps do them better because they have had that bonus practice this morning on that Grand Prix circuit, and that's perhaps where they can make up some of the time and the best overtaking manoeuvres heading into this afternoon Nurburgring 24-hour race. So it'll be interesting to see how these drivers do this afternoon. TNR Rebellion is, however, back out on circuit. Memto, they're having a very long run there, as he headed through turn number 4 and up towards turn number 5 now. So TNR Rebellion back on circuit. Bambi, however, still in the pit lane, so perhaps he has now called it an end to this morning's qualification session, as Memto there just in front kicks up a bit of dust. Future F1 currently lying there in 3rd position on the grid, so at the moment he's not doing enough to grab that championship position. Of course, in terms of championships are concerned, it would mean that TNR Rebellion has to finish about 6th or 7th if Future F1 did win the race to be ordered to grab that championship. So it will be interesting to see Future F1 trying to fight back and try and grab that victory. In terms of TNR Rebellion is concerned, one disconnection here, one bad mistake could actually end his championship hopes. That's why lining up second on the grid in front of Future F1 will be so important. Getting that good run, trying to sustain it and hope his internet stands by him, so to say, and hopefully leads him towards the championship victory here this afternoon, John.
Well, yes, I believe that with the way that the points go and the fact there are only 5 runners in GT500, it does mean that even if Future F1 wins the race, Rebellion only needs to score 70% distance to be able to take the championship from his points advantage.
Because there is also, am I correct in saying, John, double points available for this race as well?
In fact, that's absolutely true. In which case, completely discard what I just said. Which, yes, means that, in fact, I believe if Future F1 wins, then if Rebellion comes in 4th... Hang on, let me do some maths.
We'll let John do the maths, but yeah, heading over to this event, there is of course double points. It is a double length race as well. We just seen him get his calculator out now, so he's going to do the massive gone in that one. But in terms of this race is concerned, it's double length. Of course, instead of being a 90-minute race per usual in the Super GT, it's actually a 3-hour race here around the Nurburgring Grand Prix circuit, the smaller circuit, of course, not the full circuit we'll be racing on in this afternoon's Nurburgring 24-hour, but the track that you're used to see in the Formula One World Championship when it comes to visit the Nurburgring circuit. But yeah, heading on to this race, 3 hours race distance, double points are in action for this as well. So as John's trying to work out where Future F1 has to finish to win the championship based on where Rebellion finishes, we are now looking at RS96, who is currently, as things stand, leading in terms of the standings are concerned. He is on them provisional pole position. RS, as currently at the moment, he is 8th overall in the championship, 6th overall in class. He didn't actually start the first 4 rounds of the championship, but he's been a bit handy when he has started. He didn't even start the last one at Suzuka, but when he has started, he picked up a 2nd position in round 5, a win in round 6. So he's definitely got pace on him, but he just hasn't been able to mount a serious title challenge because of how much he hasn't been racing so far this season. But apart from that, he has got some good pace on him, as demonstrated here. Provisional pole position with just 2 minutes and 56 seconds to go here around the Nurburgring Grand Prix circuit in the final round of the Core Super GT Championship.
Yes, indeed. And coming back to the results, if Future F1 wins, Rebellion finishes 4th or lower, then Future F1 can take the title. I had indeed forgotten about the double points. But yes, so certainly, so long as Future can stay 3 positions ahead, then the title will be his.
Definitely be interesting to see if he can, of course, do that or not. But don't forget, you can find us on Facebook this morning. Core Online Racing is the destination for you on Facebook. You can also send us a tweet this morning on Twitter, hashtag Core Super GT or hashtag Core N24. We'll be trying to answer all your questions this morning regarding this afternoon's race, or of course the Super GT race. And guess what? You can catch us again this afternoon. 2:45 is the time that the live stream, I believe, is going live for the warm-up lap around the Nurburgring Nordschleife. In fact, it might be 2:30, but we'll confirm that in just a second.
It will be 2:15. Not 2:45 even.
Say again, John.
It will be 2:45.
2:45, yeah. So 2:45, your place to come and see the warm-up lap live for that one. With, of course, full commentary throughout the whole course of the 24 hours this year, with the green flag flying at 3 o'clock on Saturday afternoon all the way through until 3 o'clock on Sunday. So make sure that you stay tuned to that one. In terms of what's happening on circuit now, there is still RS still doing the laps in, trying to get as much practice as possible heading into this 3-hour race, really bumping up the track time. But just as we say that, TNR Rebellion has just gone provisionally fastest, jumped up to first position. Future F1 now down to third position. That's not what Future would have wanted, because now he's got a car in between himself and TNR Rebellion. Both of those drivers trying to fight for the championship, but Rebellion put down his marker, showing that he is here to win the championship. He put it on provisional pole position. Can RS try and find a fight back to put it on pole, or have we got our pole position sorted and done and dusted for the 2015 Core Super GT final?
It would be surprising to see either Memto or Glenn Els manage to do anything from this. While Memto is a series debutant, he hasn't actually had very much time in the car at all. So I don't believe he'll be challenging particularly firmly. In Glenn, we've seen struggling qualifying throughout the series, so certainly probably no challenge from him. Bambi is of course in the pits and the only runner in GT300, so plenty, or I believe he retired the car early, as we see Memto, it seems, appearing backwards on the circuit, but yeah, certainly that is the end of the qualifying session, and TNR Rebellion has taken the pole position away from RS. So perhaps a heated battle at the front of the field awaiting us.
Well, it's going to be not the best qualifying sessions there for Memto and Glenhouse, both of whom competing in this afternoon's race. But heading over now to this Super GT battle on circuit, TNR Rebellion has shown his form all throughout the championship, so it'll be interesting to see if he can keep on to that heading into this afternoon's race and try and grab that championship victory that he so desperately desires. But could Future F1 put a spanner in the works this afternoon, John, and head over and grab that GT 500 finish? It'll be interesting to see if he can make that stick or not. In terms of the GT 300 category is concerned, it would mean it's between Philo and Etik, but neither of those drivers competing here this morning even. So it does mean that on race results, it does mean that Philo has actually won that GT 300 category, because no one from the GT 300 category is actually competing here this afternoon. So that championship has fair enough been decided. Future F1 has to finish, of course, remember, 3 places above Rebellion in this race if he is to grab that Super GT 500 championship. Memto 89 currently lying there in 4th position. Not the best qualifying really for him or for Glenhouse, but they've also had limited sort of track time so far in this championship compared to some of the other drivers. Of course, Glenhouse didn't even start round number 3, didn't finish in round number 2, did not finish in round number 6. So he's had a pretty poor so far Super GT campaign, whereas Memto not a regular to the series, so to finish there in 4th actually hasn't been a bad qualifying for him. He pretty much knows the circuit off by heart with all the testing he's been doing ahead of this afternoon's race. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens in terms of that one is concerned. Both of these drivers now to come up towards the halfway point of this warm-up lap, then they will get into 2x2 formation, and then we will get the green flag going in this final round of the 2015 Super GT Powered by Core Championship, right here from the Nurburgring Grand Prix circuit. 3 hours of action, double points on offer. Who is going to take the 2015 championship? It really is between Future F1 and TNR Rebellion for the championship. Rebellion on pole position. However, Future F1 has a car between himself and Rebellion heading into the start, with RS96 there in 2nd position on the grid. Then we got Future F1, that championship contender, followed there by series newcomer actually, Memto 89 there in 4th position, followed by his Concrete Climax team, his N24 compatriot there, Glenhouse 81 in 5th position. GTP Bambi came into the pits very early on in qualifying, about halfway through, didn't perhaps have the best qualifying session, and he will start the race from 6th position as the cars head up now towards the latter half of the warm-up lap. We'll quickly throw over to John Bowes one more time. John, what is your race prediction? Who do you think will take the 2015 Super GT Championship?
Well, given his past performances, I'm tempted to say that RS is the man for the job today. However, that speedy qualifying, or end to qualifying from TNR Rebellion, is possibly a sign that RS isn't going to have it as easy as he did in round 7, or 6 even.
Well, it is possible indeed, because of course RS did win the race last time out at Suzuka, so it definitely could be
No, he
taking
won at
over
round 6.
the final chicane. It'll be interesting to see what happens then on this opening lap. The cars will come 2x2 formation as they head round the final corner. Future F1, in fact, is trying to jump a bit early here, but now they all slot into position. We're all ready to go for the final round of the 2015 Core Super GT. The green light is on around about now, and away we go. We're racing in the final round, and it's a good start by TNR Rebellion, a bad start by RS, and Future F1 has got the jump. He looked racy coming out the final corner, and he's got the jump already as they dive down into turn number 1 for the first time. Future F1 can't quite find the line heading into turn number 1, but RS is instantly under pressure. Memto has gone past into 3rd position. No, he hasn't quite, because RS has managed to fend him off on the exit of turn number 1. So both these drivers looking very racy here today, but a bad okay by RS Nutter was dropped back, and now Future F1 right where he wants to, in the sights of TNR Rebellion. Of course, he has to finish 3 places above him in today's race to be crowned the 2015 champion. Can he perhaps make that stick here this afternoon as the drivers head down the hill now through turn number 6 and down towards turn number 7, that tight right-hander hairpin section. But here is RS, he's trying to find a comeback now. He's all over the back of Future F1. He flicks a card to the right hand side. Can he get the move stuck heading into turn number 7? Not quite, and in fact he might actually cost himself up slightly and open himself up to challenge some Memto behind. So it'll be interesting to see these battles throughout the course of this morning's race. TNO Rebellion, however, leads out front on the opening lap of the 2015 Super GT finale. Future F1 in second position. We've got RS there in third, Memto in fourth, Glenhouse in fifth. Bambi hasn't been able to challenge so far. In fact, he's dropped way back. He's obviously had
Bambi
some
is
kind of
in
assistance in the first
GT300,
lap.
Luke. Bambi is in GT300.
Yes, apologies for that. Bambi is actually in the GT300 category, so he has got that efficiency. In terms of how he's, it'll be interesting to see. So basically, he just here to run his own race with you this afternoon, gain some experience behind the wheel, and see how many points he can put on the board. Glenhouse now battling with Memto there between them all. So Bambi then, he's not really going to be able to challenge much of this afternoon because he's not got.
I believe, sorry to interrupt you, Luke, we've just had Glenel's and Mentor89 having a spin out of the final corner. I don't know what happened there, but certainly they all got very bunched up into the final chicane. I think Future F1 maybe had a bad run through it, but certainly RS was very bunched up, and it looks as though Glenn and Mento have taken damage. Oh, perhaps Mento has got away with it, I'm unsure. No, Mento's car is definitely damaged.
So he's got some damage there through turn number 2 and turn number 3. You can't really keep control of the car. So that is Memto and Glenhouse perhaps out the contention for this race already. But being 3 hours, we know that you can come back from one small mistake if those around you also make mistakes, and you keep your head down and keep it clean. So we can't write them off just yet. But it's not the start that both of those drivers would want to their N24 adventure, so to say. Future F1, they're currently in second position, trying to fend off RS behind him. But this isn't the start, really, that Future F1 would have wanted. He is, yes, he's got up into second position, but now TNO Rebellion is starting to pull away out front, and that's not what he wants, because he needs to finish, of course, 3 places above him, and having the crash behind, that might now end Future F1's chance to get those 3 places, because he won't be 3 places below if Memento and Glenhouse cannot get back onto the end of this pack in good time. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that battle. TNO Rebellion now heading up towards the final chicane for the second time to go on to lap number 3 of this race, even though the counter there on the left-hand side says lap number 3, one of which, of course, was the warm-up lap, so we factor that in. Still 2 hours, 53 minutes to go in this one. TNO Rebellion putting himself right where he needs to be, right out front, and currently on course to win the 2015 Super GT Championship. Just how long can he hold that on for? RS, however, he had a bad start, dropping behind Future F1, but now he's trying to rectify that, heading down into turn number 1 for the 3rd time. He's gone right down the inside, fending him off by the outside, and he's managed to get that loose stick. So RS now back into second position. Future F1 now heading backwards down into 3rd position, and definitely going in the wrong direction in terms of his championship battle is concerned, John. Just as we see Memento now heading into pit lane with that damage. There is RS coming up just in front there through turns number 6 and heading down the hill towards turn number 7. This is sort of the fast and flowing sections of the Nurburgring Ultralight circuit as they head down, really be able to open up the horsepower in the car. Memento and Glenhouse have now both made their respective pit stops. Bambi now then jumped up into 4th position, but he's the only competitor here today in that GC 300 category, just hoping to put some points on the board. In terms of the standings are concerned, TNO Rebellion, of course, needs to finish 3 places below Future F1 in terms of there to be issues in terms of that championship is concerned. TNO Rebellion's closest rival, of course, TNR 5 Ziggin, not actually competing here this weekend. So 5 Ziggin will not be able to win that championship. Well, in fact, no, he could win the championship. If both the drivers retire from the race very early on, both have disconnection issues. And because 5 Ziggin has won 2 races so far this year, he could still win that championship. He is reliant on some massive disconnection issues with both Future F1 and TNR Rebellion. In order to do that, TNR Rebellion very sideways there coming out of turn number 15, so perhaps he's got some setup issues on that car, or perhaps with being able to really open the back of that car out as he heads up now towards turn number 2, round turn number 3, the tight sections of the Nurburgring Grand Prix circuit. There is Future F1 currently in 3rd position, not really had the start that he would have wanted. so far to this race. Of course, he needs to get up there and really challenge the front runners if he wants to win this race. So far, lying there in third position, that's not the best position he would have wanted to have been in. But hopefully, if he can make up some more positions, try and get past RS, and then try and challenge TNR Rebellion out front, then perhaps he might be able to make up those positions that he needs to heading into the latter stages of this race. Mentoring Glenhouse, of course, had contact very early on. They've come into the pit lane and now coming back out of the pit lane, or now have come back out of the pit lane and now trying to make up the ground that they lost. But that's a lot. But that's a hell of a lot of ground to make up. Looking at the track map there on the left-hand side, we see Future F1 coming out or coming into turn number 10. Meanwhile, there we've got Bambi now just coming through turn number 6, and Memto in fact just coming out of turn number 4. So it just shows how much these cars are separated. It's about sort of half a lap, so it's about 1 minute, sort of 10 seconds. Memto there in 5th, and Future F1 there in 3rd position. So both the drivers then have got a lot of ground to make up, but can they get that ground made up before we get towards the end of the race? So they could perhaps challenge, but of course with fresh tyres on, Memto knows the circuit because of his Nurburgring testing. So does Glenhouse. So these drivers should be able to make up lost time sooner rather than later in this one. A lot of dust kicked up there on the outside of that by Memento 89, but it'll be interesting to see how long it takes him to reach up to the pack behind. There is Glenhouse lying in 6th position. Both of these drivers, Memento and Glenhouse, looking forward to this afternoon's Nurburgring 24-hour race. It'll be interesting to see how their respective teams do in this afternoon's race. A race, in fact, which promises a titan battle out front between the Poland 24 boys, GTL, Lucas Plotnik and co. Concrete Climax Racing Team, Johnny B 1990, Memto and Co in that one. So that's the real battle to look out on the circuit in this afternoon's race. Will of course Reef Racing and Glenhouse might not be too far behind.
Indeed.
The lights going live at 2:05 this afternoon, 3 o'clock for the green flag in that one.
Yes, indeed. We have seen in practice Glenel's and the Reaper Racing team being exceptionally fast and certainly likely to be one of the front runners. As we know, the GTR is one of the fastest cars off the line, and starting in second place, it will be hugely surprising if they're not into the lead of the race when the N24 green flag flies by the time they get to turn 1.
Yes, it'll be interesting to see what happens on that one. That's coming up 3 o'clock this afternoon for all of the action there. Meanwhile, here in the Super GT finale, TNR Rebellion is currently doing all he has to do to take the 2015 Core Super GT Championship here. RS96 there in second position. He's really been so far the spanner in the works. Future F1 in fact has now dropped a long way behind RS96 because Future F1 of course he has to finish 3 places above TNR Rebellion, but so far before he can do that he must first pass RS and then he must pass TNR Rebellion and hope that Rebellion falls into some kind of problem that means he does drop back. And those 3 places, is it on Memto and Glenhouse to catch up the pack and do their thing to try and get past Rebellion to allow Future F1 to win this championship. But so far, with 15 minutes gone of this race, that it does very much appear as if TNR Rebellion has got the championship wrapped up. But of course, hindsight's a funny thing. It will be interesting to see what happens later on in this race and see who can actually make up those positions and actually get to the place that they want to be towards the end, really challenge and perhaps again put another spanner in the works, and perhaps the championship then might swing later on towards Future F1's race. So we've still got a lot of racing to go here around the Nurburgring Grand Prix circuit. Still a lot of action to take place, still 2 hours and 46 minutes of running, so we've still got a long time to see what happens with that battle for the championship in the GT 500 category. In terms of the GT champion in that GT category, TNR Philo is not here this weekend. Neither is his closest rivals, Pfeffer and etic in the GT300 category. So therefore, it appears that neither of those drivers will be able to score, which means on aggregate, TNR Philo has actually now become the GT300 champion in that class. So a good championship by Philo in that one. We've only got one competitor here in the GT300 class, being represented by GTP Bambi, who's currently lying in 5th position after the Mento and Glenhouse incident about 10 or so minutes ago. There is TNR Rebellion now heading down into turn number 1 through turn number 2 on his fifth or sixth lap here of the Nurburgring Super GT finale. We've still got a long way to go in this one. To have your views addressed this morning, then all you've got to do is get on Twitter via the address @CoreOnlineRacing or via the hashtag CoreSuperGT and CoreN24. So make sure you get on that this morning for any shout outs, comments, questions. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there as well. We're going to hand that back over to John Bose for a second.
Yes, indeed. So at the front of the field, we still have TNR Rebellion leading RS96, but crucially, he doesn't seem to be dropping the German driver at all, and possibly even that Lexus catching up to that Nissan ahead of it. Future F1 does seem to be falling off the back of these two, as we've seen quite frequently in the dry. But looking skywards, it is looking particularly overcast, and certainly there is a potential for there to be rain later on today. And with 3 hours of racing still ahead of us, it could definitely be an upset. As we saw at Tsukuba, Future F1 was a masterclass in the rain. Yeah, definitely surpassing the two Zs of the TNR boys ahead of him when they really seem to struggle. However, we have seen him also struggle very heavily in the wet rounds of Autumn Ring and Apricot Hill. So a driver that really hasn't had consistency in the weather, but has occasionally had some really inspired runs. So perhaps it could be the spanner in the works that really opens this race up to him if the rain does start coming down. RS, of course, took a masterful win in the rain, but has also been very quick in the dry, so perhaps he'll be well suited to either set of conditions.
Yeah, so it'll definitely be interesting to see what happens with that one. Just as you said, with the overcast, we might in fact have that wet weather come in, which of course we did see at the Tespuka round. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that one. Will the rain come down? Will we see the wet weather come in again? Of course, RS there in second position. He's competed in 2 races so far this season, and both of which he has had very strong finishes. He had a second place plus a victory, so he has shown that he's got the form to compete, so to say, in the Super GT category. He's trying to chase down TNR Rebellion, who's just shot off in front, and definitely now on the right road to take in the 2015 Core Super GT Championship. Future F1, who can actually take that championship as well. In third position, he's finished 3 places above TNR Rebellion, but so far that doesn't look as if it's going that way. We had an earlier incident between Memto and Glenhouse, both of which now currently running in 4th and 6th positions, but they're trying to recover the lost ground. Meanwhile, GTP Bambi, the only runner in the GT300 category, he's currently there lying in 5th position in that one, and trying to get some well-deserved points on the board for this afternoon's race. It'll be interesting to see what happens in that one. Meanwhile, TNR Rebellion currently out front, and hopefully John heading the right way towards his 2015 championship. Oh, and just as we say that, Memto very wide coming out these Schumacher S's, and he's collected the dirt, spun the car through a full 360 degrees, and has he perhaps picked up more damage there, John?
I think he got away with it, so that was pretty lucky. Yeah, certainly he does seem to be pushing very hard to get back up with the leaders, and perhaps too hard indeed, as he does have a long way to go, and as we know that damage can be far more costly than the amount of time you can gain pushing very hard. Speaking of, yep, just getting congratulated for my Wonderful managerial skills there. Meanwhile, back towards the front of the field, it seems that Rebellion has managed to stretch out the gap slightly more. Although, having said that, he did slightly better TNR Rebellion than that previously. But yes, the gap remaining about 3.3 seconds now, with 12 seconds back to Future F1.
Yeah, well, in terms of the gaps concerned, the best lap so far done the race today, a 1 minute 50.148 by TNR Rebellion, but that gap 3.4 seconds then between Rebellion in front, RS there, second position, 3.4 seconds behind. In terms of the gap there, third position, Future F1, 13.6 seconds behind. So he seems to be going even further backwards. That gap was 12.5 a minute ago. Now it's back down to 13.6. So it seems that Future F1 just hasn't got the pace here this morning to compete with the front running drivers. And if he hasn't got the pace, then how can he perhaps go on and try and compete for this championship here this afternoon?
Yes, indeed. And we've definitely, as I mentioned before, Future F1's never quite managed to show the pace of the two Zs ahead of him. He has managed to, or shown himself as being one of the faster drivers in the INF Z4, which will be competing in the N24 later this afternoon. But certainly in the GT500 cars, that HSV has never quite managed to fly as the other cars have.
Yeah, definitely, John. It'll be interesting to see what happens with that one in this race so far. Of course, then if you do want to get in touch with us this morning, it's hashtag CourtN24 or hashtag CourtCPGT on Twitter. We'll read out your tweets, your comments, and more. John will keep an eye on the chat in the YouTube channel, so you can keep fully up to date with that one as well. We've still got about 2.5 hours left to go in this race, but a very interesting qualifying session. Whacking it on pole position was TNR Rebellion just from RS. He looked on top to grab that pole position. But just as we say that, John, Future F1 again very wide through the Schumacher S. Is that just where Memto went off a few moments?
Yes, indeed it is, and
that corner perhaps put him in difficulty for some of these drivers out there. Future F1 all over the place.
well, yes, we know that the GT500 cars can go through there absolutely flat out on a fresh set of tyres due to the high level of aerodynamic grip. But it could be a case that as the tyres start to go off, that you can, or this is no longer the case, and you do need a little bit of a lift, and perhaps that's just starting to catch some of the drivers out now.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, heading on to this afternoon's race, that corner will be fundamental in getting that run down the hill. So could perhaps that again cause some issues in the 24-hour race this afternoon. That's definitely something to look into. There is a way to see the TNR Rebellion now what looks like to be coming up to lap Bambi for the first time. So it'll be interesting to see how much of an issue that proves for him. RS doesn't seem now to be too far behind. It appears, if anything, the RS beginning to close up now on TNR Rebellion. So it'll be interesting to see that battle develop over the next few laps. Future F1 just slightly behind them, but he does seem to be losing pace, dropping down slightly. That mistake just a few moments ago down at the Schumacher S's wouldn't have done him any good either at all. Now there is Bambi, he's caught him in fact the wrong place because this is the Schumacher S's where the drivers seem to be getting it wrong, but no, Bambi sensibly moves to the left hand side, allows TNR Rebellion, the faster car, to go through. He's obviously been given the blue flag there by the marshals in a sensible position. Now there is RS in second position. He's now got to try and find his way past Bambi in front, so again hopefully he'll be again though he has caught him in the right place there. He's caught him down the hill, heading up towards the run, towards the chicane. So the best plays will really to catch Bambi. He moves over to the right hand side, allows RS to go through, and the two leaders there pass the back marker nice and easily for the first time. That is, they'll be passing Bambi a few more times than that, no doubt, in this morning's race. But now, how will Future F1 share? But he is kind of a few seconds behind, so we won't be seeing Future F1 getting past for a few moments just yet. Lap number 12 here of the Core Super GT finale. RS trying to hunt down TNR Rebellion for the race lead here this afternoon. But even if RS does actually take the lead here this afternoon. That won't impact on TNR's chances of grabbing the championship as long as he finishes ahead of future or over, he will become the champion. So surely, John, wouldn't it just be easier than if RS does actually get up behind TNR Rebellion? Why don't Rebellion just play sort of the long game, don't put them under too much strain, in fact, perhaps even let him go past just to avoid not getting that contact and then just keeping it nice and clean to grab the championship victory.
Sorry, Luke, could you repeat that? Your audio is a bit crackly.
Oh, apologies. Heading over to what I just said, TNR Rebellion being in front, with him knowing that he has to win the championship by just finishing sort of less than 3 places below Future F1, wouldn't it just be easier for TNR Rebellion to not give RS that much issue, perhaps even let him go by, because he knows that he can still win the championship?
Yes, I imagine that's certainly something that he'll consider, and it will definitely be something that or if it does come push to shove, then he's not going to go and compromise his car or his race by getting in a particularly damaging fight. But certainly at the moment, it seems as though he's got a comfortable cushion behind him. Certainly has the pace to outrun RS at the moment, and that yeah, he's just going to go hell for leather at the moment and just see if he can hold that Lexus off.
Well, for RS, he really has got nothing to lose here this morning. In terms of the championship's concern, he's only on 22 points. He's not going to be able to catch RCB in front. Future F1 in front to get that third position in the class. So really, in terms of point standings are concerned, he's not really going to lose a lot. Glenhouse behind his nearest rival in terms of the championship's concerned. Glenhouse can move up to fourth here today, but with him being so far behind, RCB now can afford to give it hell for leather. Close up on TNR Rebellion, of course, with RCB not actually competing in that many races this season, just coming in and sort of giving it a go here and there, which has definitely limited his championship capability. It'll be interesting to see what happens and how far he can actually get up the grid. So RS there is currently lying, in 6th position in class. He's only competed in 2 events, but the 2 events he has competed in, 1 second position, 1 win in that one. So in terms of the points of concern, he could actually get past Glenhouse, and in fact he could actually pass RCB in the championship standings with a 2nd position or even victory here this afternoon. So definitely wants to try and push on and grab that victory. And just as we look back now, he is now heading up to under a second nearly to TNR Rebellion. So hooking up into the slipstream down this hill, could he perhaps make a move on either this lap, if not the next, John?
Oh, I doubt it'll be this lap as they're getting to the very tail end of it, but yes, the gap has got visibly smaller, hasn't it? And RS is surely pushing very hard at the moment. As the tyre life starts to go off in these cars, it is one of the times that you can really make up huge amounts of time if you're right on form. Certainly with the TNR Rebellion, we have seen the TNR boys tend to do shorter stints, sort of about 20 minutes, compared to everyone else who's been tending to run closer to the half an hour. Obviously, this is a bit of a change in strategy for Rebellion now as we are approaching 27 minutes or 27 and a half minutes into the race. So clearly he's adapted himself to match RS's style. But yes, I would imagine that most of these drivers will be attempting to do a 5-stop throughout this race, although obviously Memto and Glenn have had to pit early for damage. But certainly they could well be the cat among the pigeons by the end of the race, as we see RS running just a little bit wide through that corner and getting up on the curb, but he doesn't seem to have lost too much, but it might be a sign that he's just pushing that little bit too hard.
Yeah, definitely. It'll be interesting to see if he can find his way past him. But just as you say that, John, look, it's even getting darker here, so perhaps the rain not too far away. In terms of pit stops are concerned, as you can see there, the front right tyre of RS on 7% degradation. Would it be easier for these drivers to try and stay out, knowing the rain could be coming kind of as soon as possible, try and extend this stint before coming in for more slicks and then the race starts? It's definitely kind of an interesting to see what people could do in terms of strategy is concerned. Will they be coming in to change their slicks, hoping it stays dry, or will they try and hold off until the rain comes?
I would imagine that they are all getting to the end of their tyre life anyway. As we look at Future F1, he's on 6 and 6, and certainly while there's plenty of grip or sort of controllable tyre life there, the deficit in terms of the speed that he can do on fresh tyres and the speed that he'll be able to reproduce now will be so much that he will need to think about coming to this. And indeed, it looks like he is doing so now. Yes, he is. So
Yeah, his
Future
best
F1,
performance has gone out of those tyres, and he's just coming in to try and change it. In fact, with future F1, he's really got nothing to lose here because he's so far behind the two leaders. He knows he has to push on to try and win this championship. By coming in, he might as well gamble on pitting now because what else is he going? Kind of what else is he staying out there for? He's got no one around him to race for. He might as well come in and try something a bit different. But just as we say that, John, look, the two leaders are still battling hard here, trying to find a way past each other as they now head down into turn number 6 for the 15th time here in the Core Super GT finale. RS, in fact, getting a lot of gravel there on the outside of turn number 6. That would have lost him some slight performance heading down the hill into turn number 7. But surely, John, it's more when will RS get past rather than if RS gets past now.
yeah, certainly he seems very determined to do it in this stint so that he can then get his new boots on and not have to worry about TNR Rebellion. But certainly he does seem to be making small errors, and especially at that corner, as TNR Rebellion has in fact run wide there, so he has opened the door and
Well, it
RS
could
has
open
gone
up the
through.
chance. He could open up the chance for him to go. Yeah, in fact, he
He's
has
already done it.
actually got past. So yeah, he's made that move stick. Because I was just gonna say perhaps RS would want to try and get the undercut in terms of the pit stops. But saying that, TNR Rebellion has got the run coming up the hill and he's trying to go for a move again around the outside. He can't quite find it, however, as they come into the chicane. Now, will TNR perhaps try and pit now?
They
And try
both
and
have.
jump RS in the stops. They both had. They followed each other into the pit lane. So the battle now is all in the hands of the engineers to try and get their cars out as quick as possible. Who will do so? We don't know. RS has track position heading into the pit lane, so he will have the advantage. But with a quick pit stop by TNR Rebellion, could he perhaps put kind of let's
Sorry
fuel
to
up the car, try
interrupt
and
you,
get the
Luke, but it
run?
looks as if there are slight drops of rain falling on the camera lens now. This is really something that is going to turn things inside out in this race, as we've seen previously. While the rain starts light, quite frequently
No,
we've seen in this game that it will go from suddenly being almost
so
perfectly
nothing
dry
to everything
to
in terms of
absolute
this.
washout.
What I'm saying though, John, is did these drivers see the rain before they came in the pit stop? Because they can't have done. So they just put on brand new slick tyres, and now they'll be coming in again within 5 minutes to try and change them again into wet tyres. If they stayed out one more lap, they could have seen the
Well,
rain
it would
coming
have
in
been
down
far
and they
too
avoided
early
it.
to react anyway, and I think this is probably the right call for both these cars anyway, just because if they'd come in and put on wet weather tyres now, they'd be losing so much time in this next 5-10 minutes, as you said, before the track actually begins to get wet.
Yeah,
Certainly, it
TNR Rebellion currently out front in this, no, currently in second position even, as RS has now found his way past. That TNR mistake back then, John, because it has not only lost track position, but it seems to actually now be dropping a fair way behind RCB as well. So behind RS as well now. So it just shows that RS has definitely got this car dialed in. His 2 starts so far during this championship, 1 second position and 1 race win. He's got a very good record in the Super GT. And one questions that had he actually taken up this championship full time, could he be in a position, John, to challenge for the championship?
yes, you can't help but think that that would have been the case, can you? He really is one of the strongest drivers that we've seen throughout the core community, and certainly be it GT cars, these Super GT sort of Super Touring car style machines, or indeed prototypes, he has always been a very handy driver.
Yeah, definitely, and he's shown his form, of course, in the World Endurance Championship. He had some fantastic battles in his GT class. He was off to the front runner, in fact, in that GT class. So RS definitely a speciality when it comes to GT racing, and he looks on course so far to be able to seriously challenge here for the final. race win of the Super GT season. Now, one question, John: should he perhaps take up the championship full time for the next season? Because if he's showing form like this, he could have won the championship this year. And if, of course, the Super GT returns for a second season, then he could perhaps be a dominant force in that one. So it's definitely something that he should think about in the off season. RS heading through turn number 5, through turn number 6. He's pulled up a considerable gap now for TNR Rebellion. He's definitely sort of broken the slipstream around about there, so he's definitely showing some good pace here today. Now, TNR Rebellion, he knows that he doesn't have to win the race to win that championship. As long as he finishes less than 3 points to F1, who's in all sorts of issues so far this morning, then he knows he's won the championship. In my eyes now, John, as long as TNR keeps it on the circuit without too many mistakes and doesn't get disconnected, then the championship seems as good as his.
It certainly does seem to be that way, and even with well, at the moment, I would assume that the odds of both RS and TNR Rebellion having significant enough issues to throw future F1 towards the lead of the race, it seems fairly unlikely that it would happen to both of these drivers, and certainly with how far back Memto is, and failing that Glenn Owls, it really is going to be very challenging for Future to get himself in a position where he could take the championship win.
Yeah, well, of course, Five Ziggen's not competing here today, but if neither of these drivers do finish the race here today, if TNR Rebellion doesn't finish the race through disconnection or Future F1, then Five Ziggen will win the championship because he's got more race wins. So that is still a possibility. We have seen disconnections plague many drivers in Core before, but as long as the internet holds up, then TNR Rebellion, wherever he finishes, will take the championship because they're both on joint amount of points, and there isn't enough races here to there be no points awarded, because the minimum amount of points will be about 2 or 3 points here this afternoon. And even if TNR Rebellion drives around towards the back of the field 2 minutes behind the rest of the field, then he will actually take that championship.
Indeed, he will, and yeah, certainly I think that so long as Future doesn't finish in second or higher, then Rebellion can indeed finish last in class. Obviously, there is the 70% rule, so the drivers will have to complete 70% of the leader in class's distance in order to score points. So that is possibly the only way in which Future F1 can really have a crack at this championship as the cars are positioned now. Perhaps if the rain continues to fall as hard as it is, the track will become wet, at which point we have seen mistakes coming from the usually almost flawless TNR boys, so that could be an opportunity for Future. But as you said, as it stands at the moment, it really does seem like an insurmountable task.
Well, definitely. We still got, though, quite a long while to go here in this race, and it could all happen yet. We still got 2 hours, 23 minutes to go here in the Core Super GT finale. TNR Rebellion heading down now into turn number 1 for the 19th time. He's heading up against the lap. Is that Bambi just in front of him? It's lapping for the second time. It'll be more than 2 times, believe me, during the course of this race. Bambi, the only runner here today in that GT300 car, so he has got that power deficiency, but he's good. He's going out there showing a true racer's form and trying to knock away the laps on him. No, in fact, Bambi is further up the field. That is RS there in front of him, who is trying to chase down. Now that gap does seem to have stabilised, John. We did see RS start to pull away, but if anything, now it seems that TNR Rebellion is starting to try and claw that gap back somehow.
It's hard to tell. I think RS, you're right, is not pushing as hard as he was, but certainly I think the gap is still increasing slowly. Certainly, RS, we've known, is a driver who is very capable of managing his strategy to perfection, and certainly since he is now in the lead of the race, it is really just a case of managing that gap back to TNR Rebellion rather than necessarily pushing as hard as he can. Certainly, I believe that this pair is still pulling away from Future F1 at this moment in time. What will be interesting to consider is whether Memto or Glen Owls, the two cars that took damage early on, are making any headway. And previously we saw the gap was about a minute back to Memto. It's now 56 seconds, but I believe that's with RS and Rebellion having taken a pit stop. But I think because Memto had that early stop, that he hasn't actually had a stop in that time. So I think he is still falling back at the moment, and a similar story with Glen Owls. Certainly the gap between Memto and Future F1 is now down to about 25 seconds, or 27 seconds even. And so we may well get a battle between the two Hondas before long. But yes, the only real story at this moment in time is the battle at the front of at the very front of the field between RS96 and TNR Rebellion. While it does appear that the German driver is slowly managing to pull away from the American, I don't think it will be too easy for him to really stretch this gap out. And certainly, as we know, if both drivers are really trying to do their best, it may not be too long before mistakes start to creep in. Certainly the surface water percentage is still reading 0 despite the rain falling down. But as we have heard previously, this is the reading for the condition on the racing line, not necessarily what it's like off the circuit. So this could well start to have an effect as we get into some of the more obscure braking zones. Certainly we know that turn 1, or what the game considers to be the dry line, isn't necessarily the most intuitive line into that corner. So as the rain keeps falling, it may well be a source of surprise loss of grips and aquaplaning going into there as the dry line remains nice and grippy, but as the conditions off circuit become worse and worse. Checking back down the field, we see that Bambi is indeed still circulating in that GT300 Super Impreza. Obviously he'll be welcoming the rain coming, because as we saw at Tsukuba, he really does have the pace in that car with its admittedly it does have four-wheel drive, so that could be it does play a significant advantage in the rain. But yes, we've seen him manage the pace in the dry compared to his other GT300 competitors in the past, and know that he is no dab hand. Well, he's definitely no slouch at all in that car, and certainly he could well be challenging some of the GT500 cars to some proper racing if the rain continues to fall, as we see him peel into the pit lane for, I believe, his first stop. So a good 40 minutes on a single stint. Not a bad run at all for the GT300 car. Looking further up the field, we see Glen Owls just putting a lap on GTP Bambi there. Still a big deficit back to Memto, the other car that he was caught in that incident with. Certainly this isn't quite the start of the day that Glen would have been hoping for, but yes, he'll have plenty of time to relax and recuperate, since it will be his Reaper Racing teammate R. Clark that will start off the Nismo GTR for the Nurburgring 24 Hours, which will be starting at 3 o'clock, with coverage starting at 2:45 as the cars set off on the pace lap. Also, don't forget that there is a season review of the Car Selection Series and VLN Series, which defined both the car choices for the teams competing in this year's N24 and the qualifying results. So that video will be live during the interlude between the end of this race and the start of the N24 coverage. other pit action, we see Memto89 finally coming in for his stop. So, as expected, really, just after, or in fact, I don't think we have seen Glenn Al's return to the pits, but certainly this seems about on track for half an hour stints for the British driver. Certainly not the start of the race that he was hoping for, as he has had some reasonable pace so far. His tyres are very worn down, so perhaps I'm mistaken in assuming that was about a half an hour stint, or either that or he's being very abrasive on those racing softs that he has just put on the car. Certainly, as far as strategy is going, this is playing into the hands of RS, TNR Rebellion, and Future F1, who managed to pit early, because as the rain keeps coming down, it becomes more and more likely that we will be seeing the surface water start to creep up sooner rather than later. And this means that drivers like Memto and Glenn, and indeed Bambi, who have just come into the pits, will get less out of these tyres than the drivers such as RS, Rebellion, and Future, who all came in about a quarter of an hour ago now. So, yeah, certainly, if the rain does start to creep up, it will mean that Memto and Glenn will really have had to make 2 stops. Looking back towards the front of the field, it does appear that RS has managed to stretch that gap even further back to TNR Rebellion. So perhaps I was mistaken when I surmised that he was just going to be managing that for the rest of the race, and he has felt that he has the ability to push away from the TNR driver and really gain some. And indeed, we see just ahead of him on the circuit, Glenn Al's in the other identical Lexus XSC 430, and so this is just a testament to really how fast RS has been pushing, that he's made up the best part of 2 minutes now on an effectively identical car to his. So a real testament to how hard the German is pushing. Obviously, it's important to remember that Glenn Al's did have a early contact with Memto89 that lost him quite a bit of time, not only at the pit stop, but it happened very early in the lap, so he had to limp the car around to get back to the pit lane and repair that damage. At the moment, though, it does seem as though he just doesn't have the pace to compete against this leading pair, though, since they are catching him at a real rate. Certainly, as we've discussed, Reaper Racing are one of the faster teams in the Nurburgring 24, and this is just a testament to how different the driving style is in cars such as these that have got fairly high downforce, and means you can really sort of lean on the tyres through the corners. And the GT cars that we'll be seeing in the Nurburgring 24 that are, while they do have a reasonable amount of downforce, certainly tend to be lacking in front end grip, and so rely a lot more on their mechanical grip for their dynamic agility. And this means that there's sort of a lot more patience is involved in driving them, and you tend to let the car flow into the corner with the GT3, or as they are technically SP9 cars that we'll be seeing in the N24, compared to these GT500 machines, which, as all we've heard, have had comparable downforce to the LMP2 class. As in fact, Glenn Al's, I think, just ran off at the final corner, since he has gone behind both TNR Rebellion and RS. There's RS certainly having to make a fairly rapid move to get out of the way, I think.
Well, TNR Rebellion there, he is trying to close up that gap between himself and RS96 for the race lead. in the final round of the Court Super GT Championship. Still got just over 2 hours to go here in this one. TNR Rebellion, of course, can or is in fact on course to win the championship. All he has to do is finish less than 3 places behind Future F1 to win that championship. And TNR Rebellion, he's not just going, it seems, for the championship win, he's also going for the race win. He's trying to hunt down RS in front of him. RS, of course, jumped him just before the first round of pit stops after a small mistake by TNR Rebellion let the German driver through. However, it seems that now TNR Rebellion is trying to find a way back past RS here to try and grab that position back. Interestingly, in terms of the weather gauge is concerned, it still says 0% water level on the racetrack, but we can see it seems to be getting pretty wet out there. So does that mean that the slick tyres they're on, they aren't being too impacted yet by the rain, John?
As I mentioned, yes, on the dry line they won't really be feeling it at all, but as we watch from the onboard we can just see tiny little flecks of spray coming off RS's tyres as he dips off that dry line onto the damp part of the circuit. Oh, as we in fact see Rebellion getting caught out, as I mentioned there, just running slightly wide off that dry line and just sliding off the circuit, because as we've mentioned, the dry line is, well, as the name implies, dry, but off that, due to the fact that it's been raining so long, suddenly there's absolutely no grip and you can aquaplane very, very easily.
Well, and the dry line, John, is going to start to become wet soon as well, and we'll be seeing more sliding. With that slide there, RS has now just pulled off back in front, and Grenhouse there, he almost tried to get himself unlapped, so could perhaps slipping and sliding be the order of the next 15 or so minutes as these cars try and find where's the dry line, where's the wet line, what you can do and what you can't do in these slippery conditions.
Yes, indeed. Well, the point I was trying to make is that conditions such as these are actually more dangerous than when the track actually becomes wet in earnest, just because the difference in grip between the dry line and the damper parts of the circuit is so big that you can suddenly get massive direction changes just because you've got loads of grip on the dry line. So if you hit the brakes there, but then 2 of your wheels are off that, then you'll almost certainly spin the car, just because there's so little grip afforded on the other parts of the circuit, as we see Rebellion again running off the circuit there. So really struggling to keep that car on the track at this moment in time. It wouldn't surprise me if it's not at all long before that surface water meter does start to creep up.
Yeah, definitely. As you can see, TNR Rebellion seems to be slipping and sliding around the Nurburgring Grand Prix circuit. Still 2 hours, 8 minutes to go. But RS, regardless of that, seems to be quite content out there. He's setting some quick lap times out there. He's trying to pull away still from TNR Rebellion, just keeping it nice and easy. In fact, he himself has now got wide coming out of turn number 15 to nearly run off himself. And in fact, RS made a mistake there, John, because that's TNR Rebellion right behind him.
It is indeed, and oh, that looked like it was quite heavy contact maybe coming into the braking. So yeah, it looks like they've actually collided slightly, and RS
Where's
very
TNR
slow
Rebellion gone?
off the
Because
corner.
no, he's off. He's off, John. He's off. He's
Yeah,
off
no,
at turn number 1.
I think TNR Rebellion just completely aquaplaned there off the circuit and is reading with engine damage. So this could well be or I say this could well be, this almost certainly is a dramatic change in events. Future F1 just
This is the
about
spanner in the
half a
works, John,
lap.
that we wanted. Future F1 there in 3rd position. This is his chance to try and get himself back into championship contention.
Yes, indeed, and yes, Future F1 about half a lap back behind those 2 cars, so about 60 seconds on the circuit. But certainly with that damage, it won't be too long before he is back up behind TNR Rebellion, certainly, as we see Memto89 and Glenn Al's trading positions with seemingly a spin for each driver on every corner in that opening infield section. Running very close together, and Memto flashing his lights with fury. I've possibly heard a fairly amusing piece of information, considering who the driver is, that he may not have wet weather tyres on this car, despite his warning and insistence that other drivers must make sure this is something they do. So yeah, this could well spell a very short race for the HSV if the weather continues as it is. Obviously, at this moment in time, he can carry on, and he can probably do so up until about 30% on the. Well, he confidently reckons 45% on the surface water meter, but
Well, does
yes,
that mean, John, if it's going up considerably, it's now up, just as you said, to 45%, does this mean that we could start seeing pit stops for wet tyres?
I think you misinterpreted what I said, Luke. I actually meant to say that he reckons he can continue until 45% on those slick tyres.
Oh, yeah,
But
yeah.
as
So,
indeed the meter has finally turned from 0 to 1. Previously we've seen it take
hang on,
about...
Glenn has a sideways. John coming out of the chicane, and Memto is now all over the back of him, still flashing his headlights violently. Coming out of turn number 15, but Memto seemed to have dropped back there. He was all over the back, and in fact, now look, TNR Rebellion into the pit lane with that damage he sustained just one lap ago, with the contact between himself and RS going down into turn number 1. Now, interestingly, is TNR perhaps going to gamble to go on wet tyres because the radar now jumps up to 2%? Would it be stupid, in fact, to pit for dries, come back and then pit for wets again when he can gamble and try and make up lost time?
I would indeed assume that he has now gone directly to inters, just because the track is not going to suddenly dry, or the rain is not going to suddenly stop anytime soon. So
Is
yes,
inters the way to go though? Because what we've seen in the past sometimes is actually the inters aren't as effective as either going either full wets or full dries.
There's a optimum window where you can go very sudden or very quickly from full wet tire or full dry tires to full wet tires and vice versa. But I think, given the state of the track at the moment, it would be foolish to go directly to wet weather tires at this point, and certainly the amount of damage you do to them on the mostly dry racing line now might well heat them up or sort of burn off the tread. And certainly we've seen this replicated somewhat in Gran Turismo, that if you slide too much on the wet weather tyres, that they lose a sort of level of grip despite the wear meter not running down. So I'd say that going directly onto wet weather tyres at this moment would be a mistake, but certainly I will assume he'd have gone on to inters, and that would give him a reasonable advantage over many of his. In fact, I believe RS has had an accident. Yes, certainly that damage that we saw previously has meant that TNR Rebellion has, in spite of just having had a stop,
Yeah, RS
has passed RS before he even got into the pit lane. So
now TNR Rebellion has made his pit stop. We presume he's on the intermediate tyres, so surely when we thought the TNR Rebellion's race was over, it appears it's all turned back round again and he's leading the race out front again, John.
yes, indeed, it is a very surprising turn of events, and certainly I think that uh, we thought that Future F1 would be the biggest gainer here, but it seems actually that Rebellion has done that job,
Rebellion.
and Future is now back out ahead of RS, but obviously still on those racing soft tyres, so we'll be needing to
We'll have
come
to
into the
pit.
pits
Plus
at
TNR
some
Rebellion's in
point.
front. So in terms of
The
his
real,
championship's concerned, this isn't looking good for Future F1.
indeed it isn't. I guess the only question is whether Rebellion and RS are on those intermediate tyres, or if they have gone directly to full wets, and if that's the case, whether they can protect them while the track becomes wet enough for them to really start to shine. Certainly, if Future F1 can manage to stay out on these tyres and then switch directly to wets, and the other two have gone on to intermediates, then he won't lose too much time, since they'll all have to make that stop.
Yep, still 2 hours, 2 minutes to go here in the finale of the Core Super GT Championship. You can still get in touch with us via the YouTube chat page, which our main man John is having a look at himself. You can also get in touch with us via Twitter, hashtag Core Super GT or hashtag Core N24 for any opinion, shout outs, comments, or more. You can also catch us this afternoon, 2:45 is when we go live for the Nurburgring 24 hours. with the green flag flying at 3 o'clock. Full commentary, of course, across the YouTube channel throughout the whole course of the 24 hours. You can stay fully covered for that one. The N24 powered by Core and sponsored by Aquila Racing Cars this afternoon. Kick it off then for 3 o'clock, as we just saw there, John. Future F1 coming very sideways as he came back up the hill, heading up now through turn number 14 and up now towards turn number 15. So he is, just as you said, still on those soft tyres. The track now, the dry line becoming wetter, is now on 15% wet weather percentages. And my mind flashes back to the Core World Endurance Championship event at Silverstone in 2014, when one of the drivers didn't actually have his wet tyres installed throughout the race, and his car was flying left, right and centre. So it just shows the damage that could be done to your car should you try and stay out on the wrong tyres at the wrong time. So hopefully future F1 will make that pit stop very soon. Memento 89 coming back onto the circuit after presumably a spin coming through turn number 2, which means Glenn Alves has now kind of cleared off in front. He's now got Bambi just behind him as well. So far it's not been the best event really for Glenn Alves and Memento. They had collisions very early on today. They still really haven't been able to make a full recovery because of that. And even now, as RS is coming out of the last corner at 10:15, Glenn Alves now coming through turn number 6 and back down the hill. So they still haven't really made that full recovery from the incident a bit earlier on, and they're still trying to push on and try and
it's
some points
actually
back.
RS following Glenn at this moment in time. So I think, oh no, sorry, you're right. I mean, Rebellion is following Glenn at this moment. So yes, he's not. I believe Glenn's actually still on the lead lap at this moment in time. However, as we've mentioned, we believe, ignoring the tyre meter, which we know is dubious at best, that Rebellion is on those intermediate tyres at this moment in time, whereas Glenn, I think, is still on slicks. So I'm hearing that possibly he's actually on intermediate tyres as well, so perhaps not as easy for Rebellion as it could well be if Glenn had to come into the pits. Certainly or from my knowledge of the tyre operation, you can get up to about 30% on slicks and still have the pace compared to intermediate tyres. Then between about 30% and 70%, guys on the intermediate tyres will be quickest, and then over 70% the wet tyres will be quickest. As we see Rebellion getting very wide on the curb, and he has a big slide, just managing to keep that under control. Some really
This is like the
talented
Global
driving
Rallycross
there.
all over again. These cars slipping and sliding through turn number 6. And I was just about to say, regardless of the fact that TNR Rebellion is on those intermediate tyres, he was very slippery coming through turns 2 and turn number 3. It culminated with that slide at turn 6. He's just had another moment there through turn number 7. Where is Future F1, however? Because he's the one we need to watch. He's on the slick tyres and he's trying to keep it on the circuit. We've got some kind of collision, John, as at turn number 3. We've got a car backwards there. I believe.
Yes,
no, that's
I
Memento.
believe that was
He's
Memento.
just disconnected from the lobby. He's just left. So Memento has either left because he's not having the race he wanted, or has had some further kind of disconnection issues there as well. So Memento, he hasn't really had the best race so far in the Super GT finale. However, he has got the Nurburgring 24 hours this afternoon to look forward to. His Team Concrete Climax Racing, of course, one of the favourites for that event, and he'll hopefully be trying to go strong in that one and try and grab success for the second consecutive time here in this afternoon's event. But Poland 24, John, will be very close behind them this afternoon.
Well, Poland 24 will actually be quite a way ahead of them at the start of the event, just because, yes, due to incidences through the VLNs, he's actually starting second to last, so way down in 8th position this afternoon, whereas P24, as we know, are the proud pole sitters in that brilliant red Mercedes SLS. So certainly the battle at the start of the race will be between the Poland 24 car, the Reaper Racing GTR of Glenn Alves, although I believe it will be R. Clark who will be taking the helm, and indeed the Green Hell Heathens car, which I believe is being started by Heathen's. So yeah, it will be a really thrilling spectacle to see there. Future F1, I believe, is also... oh, in fact, no, sorry, it's RCB, Future F1's teammate in the Inferno Racing BMW Z4, who will be taking the green flag, I believe, down in 6th position. So, yes, they'll
Yeah,
also
RS
be
has now
looking to
jumped up
make
into
hay.
second position.
He has indeed, as Future F1 has come to the pits for some, I would assume at this moment in time, direct to wet weather tyres. So possibly if Rebellion and RS have gone onto Inters first, then they will also be needing to make a stop before too long, if the rain continues, that is. As we see a spinner just ahead of TNR Rebellion, I believe that was Glenn Owls, yes it was, just at the, I believe that's
Yeah,
turn 10.
Glenn Owls as well, he hasn't really had the best of races either. He had got contact very early on with Memto. He still hasn't really been able to fully recover from that. And in fact, he's gone off straight away, heading back down the hill. So he's not a very sort of happy bunny in that car so far this morning. But we're hoping that he can be on top form for the Nurburgring 24 this afternoon. Kicks off 3 o'clock UK time. Make sure you don't miss it via the Core TV YouTube channel for that. Again, very sideways, John. They're coming through turn number 13, almost hitting the barrier there on the exit of 14. And in fact, he's coming down pit road, so he's obviously got some kind of issue with that car. The
I
tyres there are
believe
showing.
it may well be that he was actually, unlike we previously thought, that he was still on slicks. So
Yeah,
it could well
Red's
be,
coming in for his
yeah.
intermediate stop. Down pit road he comes. GTP Bambi's also in the pit lane, so he's obviously changing now onto the intermediate tyres. The only GT300 runner here this afternoon, and interestingly, TNR Philo has just joined the race lobby, so he's obviously come to watch the final 1 hour and 54 minutes of action here at the Nürburgring Nordschleife circuit. Philo, of course, the GT300 champion, due to the fact that none of the other competitors who can actually beat his championship have turned up here this afternoon. But GTP Bambi still going strong in that car, still putting in the mileage, and hopefully he can be very competitive during the next season of the Core Super GT, really getting some good testing in that car, some good mileage, and showing his support for the core package, the Core Super GT package. In terms of the water level is concerned, John, it's back up to 71% now. In fact, now 72%. So should we soon be seeing the switch from the intermediate tyres onto the full wets? And in fact, that could be what GTP Bambi's done, knowing that that gorge has gone up very quickly in a short space of time.
I believe that's absolutely right, Luke. Certainly, the two runners that we think are on intermediate tyres, which are TNR Rebellion and RS,
We'll have to
seem to
come in
have been.
soon.
Well, yeah, we expect to see them soon, as indeed a fairly impressive slide there from TNR Rebellion. RS, who is in fact moving very slowly, so may possibly have had a spin. We saw absolutely fantastic in the wet at Apricot Hill, and yet here really seeming to
It's not
struggle in
coming to,
terms of
yeah.
pace.
Well, in terms of future F1, he's only just come in the pit lane as well, isn't he? So perhaps he's jumped onto the full wet tyres, and being just a short distance behind RS, could he perhaps make the jump on the pit stops?
Well, I would be very surprised if he didn't, to be honest, as we just got a glimpse of his car going through shot there. Yeah, he's only probably about 10 seconds behind the German driver at the moment, so I would be very surprised if he doesn't make it through. TNR Rebellion has indeed peeled into the pit lane, so that's undoubtedly for full wet tyres at this state of the track. So,
Yeah, back up now to 86% on the wet weather conditions. There is Tino Rebellion in the pit lane. He'll get back out comfortably in front of his nearest rivals. RS, we expect, will also jump into the pit lane this time around, but he's not even come out of the final corner yet. So Tino Rebellion fairly unchallenged out front, back out into the race lead on a first set of these full wet tyres. There is RS. He's coming out now of turn number 14 into turn number 15. Will he peel off
it appears
into
that he
the pit
hasn't
lane?
actually pitted, so clearly
He's,
perhaps
he's
he did
gambling
in
on some,
fact go to full wets early.
but he came in. Sure, no, he came out. He came in around the same time as TNR Rebellion, and the track wasn't even that wet then, so he can't have done. That must have been an inspired move. If he has, his tyres are still showing some good sort of condition on them. They're 10 all round, so he's showing some. He hasn't worn those tyres. They can continue, but what tyres is he on? And that's what we want to note here in this one, he's a fair distance behind TNR Rebellion. He would have closed up slightly when Rebellion made his pit stop, but TNR Rebellion has dominated this race so much so far that it's going to take quite a mammoth effort for RS to close that gap behind him. Future F1 just a short distance behind RS. In fact, it's that Future F1 battling with Glenhouse in the distance there through turn number 4 for third position.
I believe he's actually just passed GCP Bambi.
Yeah,
There we go.
So yeah, Bambi's just made his pit stop actually as well onto the wet tyres. In fact, Glenhouse is so far behind. Is that him coming through the Schumacher S's now?
It could well be, and indeed he's off the circuit there, so clearly the lack of
Oh
grip
no,
getting the best of him.
there he is. Yeah, so he's obviously come around the Schumacher S's, made some kind of mistake, and now he's coming on the track when someone's just about to come past him. So hopefully he'll get out their way.
I believe that was RS in the fellow Lexus, so
There's OS going through now, trying to hunt down TNR Rebellion in front, but it's going to, just as I said, John, take a mammoth effort for RS to be able to close up and pass TNR Rebellion when he is in such dominant form, because of course all Rebellion has to do today is finish less than 3 places behind Future F1. So if Future F1 wins the race, then TNR Rebellion has to finish in 4th position, and that's not looking likely, knowing that Bambi can't really compete with the front runners because he's got that power deficiency because he's in the GT3
he
and the
won't be
club.
scored anyway as far as
Mistake,
the points go.
oh no, he won't, no, because he'll get points. Yeah. Glenhouse doesn't seem to be able to challenge either, while RS is quite a considerable distance behind. So it's not safe to say because we've still got just under 2 hours left in this race, but it definitely seems likely that TNR Rebellion is now firmly on the road to winning the 2015 Super GT Championship, just as long as he doesn't make mistakes or gets a disconnection issue.
Yes, in other news, we've just been promised a fair amount of hooning from GCP Bambi in that Subaru Impreza GT300 car, so perhaps a brief glance at his screen may reveal that. Obviously we know it's four-wheel drive, so it could well lead to some impressive four-wheel drifts, although perhaps that powered front axle may actually be a hindrance as far as showmanship goes, but we'll have to see what he can do.
Well, in fact, John, Five Ziggin, even though he's not here today competing in that 500 class, if Rebellion doesn't finish and Future F1 finishes in 4th position, and Five Ziggin will still win that championship because he's won more races.
Yes, but if Future F1 finishes the race, even
he'll
in
get
4th place, he'll still get enough points to pass them, I believe, due to the double points for this event.
Yeah, GTB Bambi very sideways, nearly lost it coming out of turn number 6. So definitely showing a bit of drifting skills around the wet Nurburgring the Nurburgring Grand Prix circuit, even getting confused between.
Sorry to cut over you, Luke, but it seems as though whereas last time round it was Glenhouse in the black Lexus going off the Schumacher S, this time round it is RS going off in the white Lexus at the very same corner, and Future F1 doing the exact same thing, it would appear. So clearly these cars very treacherous through there. Obviously the irony of
behind him.
Aerodynamic grip is that it's entirely reliant on speed, and not only that but also the yaw of the car. As a lot of contact there between GTP Bambi and Future F1, and yes, both cars now.
Future F1 lost it coming out the corner. As he lost it coming out the corner, Bambi just slided into him, and that is quite considerable damage there, right in the centre of the Future F1 machine. So that pretty much, sorry to say it, writes off his championship hopes, because not only has he got a pit now, but he's going to be a considerable way behind. Even Glenhouse might be able to make up. Oh no, he's definitely way too far behind to try and make up some ground in this one. Bambi limping home, so he's got some considerable damage in his machine. Meanwhile, there is Glenhouse coming through, turn number 1 and 2, so he is a considerable distance behind. There's no way that he can be able to get around the track and pass Future F1 when he makes his pit stop. There's no doubt that Future F1 will have to pit this time around. There's no way that he can continue with that damage. Yeah, here we go. He's into the pit lane now. to change that damage. Still 1 hour 46 minutes to go in this one. We still want to hear from you this morning. Hashtag Core Super GT on Twitter. Hashtag Core N24 this morning, and of course this afternoon in the big one itself, starting from 3 o'clock. Via the YouTube page. You can also find us on Facebook this morning, Core Online Racing, for all your details about this afternoon's N24. Out of the pit lane now comes Future F1. He's quite a distance now behind RS96, and his championship's definitely not going the way that he would have wanted it to have gone. His championship challenge seems to be over as TNR Rebellion way out front, dominating the field, and even the Lexus of RS can't get close either. He's just thrown away. He'd even got no sort of back markers around him. TNR Rebellion can now afford to drive his own race out front, take a dominant victory here this afternoon, and clinch in firm conditions the 2015 Super GT Championship.
Yes, indeed, and certainly it would be very difficult to bet on anyone other than Rebellion at this moment in time. Although, having said that, we have only gone through an hour and a quarter of this race, so as you said, 2 hours and 45, or so 1 hour and 45 minutes remaining. So, while it is at this moment in time hard to pick anyone other than Rebellion, we have still got basically 2 more of these races to go, or as far as they've got it so far to go, so it could well be full of excitement, as we have in fact got both Lexuses having a collision very similar to the one that Memto and Glenn had earlier in the race out of the final corner. More contact ensuing on what looked like a spin for RS, and Glenn just getting tangled up in it. So not a very good race at all for these guys. As I was trying to make the point earlier, the thing with aerodynamic grip is that it's reliant on both speed and yaw. So when you get into the wet conditions such as these, and cars start to drift around and can't go particularly fast, you suddenly find that they have very little grip compared to sort of the heavier GT classes. And obviously prototypes get the worst of this, but as we've heard, these Super GT cars only about 1100 kilograms, and yeah, certainly with lots of downforce available, they are very difficult to drive in the wet. And certainly the moment that the car starts to slide, you lose a ton of the overall cornering speed that your car can achieve. So that's why they keep getting caught out through the Schumacher S, etc.
Yep, still a long time to go in this one. The Schumacher S's have definitely proved to be the deciding one so far in this one. All the drivers seem to be having issues there. In fact, RS has got damage himself there, John. So he'll obviously be heading down to the pits very shortly indeed. Still very sideways coming out of turn number 7. These cars with the power definitely drifting a lot around this circuit, and this corner in particular, the Schumacher S's being the bane of all their troubles so far today. TNR Rebellion still leads the way. RS96 there in second. Future F1 in third position. He had to win the race and hope that TNR Rebellion finished less than 3 places below him to be crowned 2015 Core Super GT champion. That won't be the case, however. He's still quite a considerable distance behind. Glenelg's 81 there in fourth position, and then the only runner today in the GT 300 category is GTP Bambi. He's currently there, currently lying in fifth position in that one, just hoping around getting some laps under his belt and really gaining experience within the core package to perhaps even mount a serious challenge for the GT300 class in next season's Super GT events.
Well, don't forget that GTP Bambi is in fact the newly named Red Bull Rider 20, who had great success towards the end of WEC Season 3 in the prototype class. So a dab hand within the core community, and certainly I believe he's just here for fun pretty much now, just keeping himself entertained, as RS96 has just peeled into the pit lane along with Glenelg's, so clearly neither Lexus having a particularly good day. Unfortunately, the earlier contact between GTP Bambi and Future F1 means that I doubt the American will manage to retake second position. And as we've mentioned, out front it is just TNR Rebellion just turning the laps with seemingly a perfectly clear track around him for the moment.
Yeah, he's been able to just dominate the field so far out there, and it will definitely be interesting to see how TNR Rebellion can go in this one. Of course, as long as he doesn't disconnect from this race, he's pretty much safe and sound to win that championship. As long as he doesn't get disconnected, then future F1 will stand a chance of winning because of the double points. Or in fact, if both of them get disconnected, then the championship will go to TNR5 Zigan. He's managed to gain 2 race victories so far this season. But as long as Rebellion keeps it out there, regardless of where it finishes, he could drive around towards the back of the field for all he cares. With the double points, he will become the 2015 core Super GT champion, so he can just afford to drive out there by himself and still become the champion here this afternoon. So as long as he doesn't run into issues, he's got that championship behind his belt. But the race victory, John, will just make his afternoon even sweeter. TNR Rebellion dives into turn number 1 to start his 39th lap here in the course Super GT finale. RS96, quite a distance behind him. He has run into his own issues so far throughout the day. And in fact, looking now at the track map on the left hand of your screen, as most of the cars coming up through turn number 10 on their 38th lap, TNR Rebellion is coming through turn number 5 and 6 on his 39th lap. He's got almost a half a lap gain on the rest of the field, which just shows TNR Rebellion's dominance so far in this core Super GT finale. RS96 looks a safe bet for second position. Future F1's championship hopes seem to be all but over here this afternoon. There's no way really that he can find a way past RS this afternoon, let alone hunt down and pass TNR Rebellion, just as long as these drivers don't make mistakes. But of course, funny things have happened in motorsport, and by keeping going, future F1 knows he's done all he can today to give himself that championship advantage. Glenhouse 81 there in 4th position. He's not had the best race so far, but all his eyes will be turning on this afternoon's main spectacle, the Core N24, kicking off from 3 o'clock this afternoon, powered by Core, sponsored by the Aquila Racing Cars. And Glenhouse will be going for Reaper Racing in this afternoon's event. Memto, who was here just a bit earlier on, also didn't have the best of action so far here today in the Super GT category. In fact, making contact with Glenhouse just a small while ago. However, his eyes will also be focusing on Nurburgring 24 to try and gain Concrete Climax Racing's second consecutive victory in that event. But of course, he'll have to try and hunt down Poland 24. He'll line up on pole position for the Nurburgring 24 this afternoon after a dominant performance in the VLN qualifying event, which happened just a few months ago. GTP Bambi there, still running in 5th position. Of course, the renamed Red Bull rider who had success in the Core World Endurance Championship before. He's currently running in 5th position, the only GT300 runner here this afternoon. So he just put in some laps on the board, getting some testing together and hoping he can mount a serious push in the next Super GT campaign. Fastest lap done today, 1 minute 49.971 by, of course, TNR Rebellion. So hopefully, if he can stay on course, which is what he wants to do, then he will not only get the race win and fastest lap, but also the championship here this afternoon. Definitely not then a bad way to spend your morning, wrapping up a championship, grabbing a win, and also grabbing a fastest lap, as well as he picks the car now to turn number 5 into turn number 6 for the 40th time. Still 1 hour 38 minutes to go here, full 100% wet weather on the racetrack. The drivers here on full wet conditions with the full wet tyres currently in this one. Both these drivers, of course, started on the slicks. It looked very overcast indeed, went to intermediates, but now, of course, on the full wet tyres. Most of the issues for the drivers have actually been coming out of that turn number 7 hairpin and through where we are now, through turn number 8 and 9 at the Schumacher S's, where most of these drivers seem to have run into trouble in one way or another here so far this morning. There is Bambi in the Subaru Impreza, coming out of turn number 15 down the long straight and heading on now to his 37th lap in that GT300 car. He's been lapped a few times by the runners around him, but so far it's been a faultless drive by GTP Bambi, of course, formerly Red Bull rider, who has some strong successes in the Core World Endurance Championship, and Bambi having some strong successes so far in that GT300 category so far this morning, but still a long way to go. Can he challenge the cars in front of him? Can he perhaps latch on to the back of Glenhouse and try and get himself into the top 4 of today's race. There's still time to find out here in the finale of the 2015 Core Super GT Championship. Back to you, John.
Yes, indeed, and certainly, while it is 100% weather now, and all of the drivers do seem to be struggling, given the length of the race that we still have ahead of us, and the speed at which things can change, it wouldn't surprise me at all if we're back to dry running before the end of the race, and that will obviously have its own twists as far as the change in pace again. RS, who we saw pretty much the dominant force in the dry, catching or having lost out slightly at the start of the race, then fighting his way back very quickly and taking the lead in the first stint, means that he could well be on for a similar performance if the weather turns better. And not to mention that as the track dries, you get a very similar situation to as it was getting wet, in that the dry line forms, which means that there's that differential of grip between the two parts of the circuit, which means that those who are opportunistic and very careful can make up huge amounts of time on slick tyres over those who have just gone for a bit more of a cautious approach. But equally, they could lose huge amounts of time by having an accident, which can be very easily done in these conditions. So it could well mean that it's not quite as secure in Rebellion's hands as it appears at this moment in time.
Well, it'll be interesting, John, because of the double length of this race. If the rain stops and we go back to dry running, who will benefit from that?
Well, as I just mentioned, I think RS is known force. Certainly, Future F1 we've not really seen have the pace in the dry, so this is really his opportunity to capitalise. But it just doesn't seem like he has a car that's particularly comfortable in these conditions, so he's struggling to do that. But certainly, I'd say that RS is the person to watch, as Rebellion getting a nice big slide out the final corner there, certainly riding the turbos. And yes, while we were watching those onboard shots from his car, I did notice he's actually short shifting incredibly early to try and get around that turbo lag. I would have assumed that the way to do it would actually be to maintain a higher gear so that he's always running with the turbo boosted, but certainly it does seem to be working for him at this moment in time, and he really has been the class of the field in the wet or so far during this race.
Yep, TNR Rebellion still dominating out front. He's still got about a half a lap advantage over the rest of the field. He really has put the hammer down and laid his marker here in this afternoon's event. He is on course to become the 2015 Core Super GT champion, as long as he doesn't sort of run into mistakes, and that crown will be his. RS96 still can't be able to find a way to really catch up on TNR Rebellion. He is just so far in front. In fact, oh no, I thought he was going off there, but it was just taking time for the track to render for him. He's still keeping some consistent lap times, however. He's still sort of keeping it on the race circuit with limited mistakes. The driver who we thought would be able to capitalise in the wet weather conditions is Future F1, who's now coming out of turn number 14 now and heading up the short run into turn number 15. It'll be interesting to see how much he can do so far to catch up on RS in front of him, but it doesn't appear as if Future F1 or RS had really got the pace to challenge here today. All eyes seem to be on TNR Rebellion, who's just dominated the race from the green flag, dominated the event so far, and should be able, or we hope should be able to hold on trouble-free to take his championship.
Yes, indeed. Sorry for the slight delay. Just getting stuff ready for the N24. But yes, certainly I would believe that Future F1 really doesn't have a particular answer to the pace of the TNR car at this round, and certainly it does mean that he'll comfortably secure second. As we mentioned, Five Ziggin being absent from this round does mean that the American will manage to get to the second step of the podium that has proved elusive so far throughout the season. But yes, certainly the top step does seem to be well and truly in Rebellion's hands at this moment in time.
Yeah, well, there's not much that TNR Rebellion can really do wrong so far today. He's put down the marker, he's shown his form, and he's definitely looking on top here today. His Future F1 just passes Bambi to lap him once again. Here, Future F1 still not being able to really challenge so far today. We've got a car off there. That is Glenhouse again at the Schumacher S's. That corner in the downfall of many drivers so far here today. Neither of these front-running drivers have been really able to cope with that. Drivers here today having made at least one mistake there, as he now flicks the car into turns number 11 and turns number 12, and then they'll head the car back down the hill. He's on his 41st lap. He is still on the lead lap, isn't he, Glenhouse 81, or perhaps just one lap behind. So
I think
he's still
he's a
not
lap down.
completely out of contention if there is some kind of mistake from the front runners. But that car definitely doesn't look great here so far this afternoon. He has run into many troubles throughout the course of today. And in fact, he's still sliding around. He still can't really get the car turned in there to turn number 14. And is he heading down pit lane? Is his car veering to the right hand side? No, he's continuing on this time into turn number 15. It just that car definitely does not look set up correctly for the wet weather conditions. Neither driver really been able to make the most of it. And here is Future F1 now coming up to lap Glenhouse. So in fact, yeah, he's a few laps down as Glenhouse in his machine in that black Lexus, but he's still, his car doesn't seem to really be set up well for the wet weather conditions. He's sliding all over the when he can, and really been ashamed really to see Glenhouse not being the competitive driver that we've seen him in the past.
Yes, indeed. As I've
Future
mentioned. Sorry, continue, Nick.
Yeah, go on, Don.
I was just going to say that the Super GT series hasn't really seen the best of Glenn. Certainly in the WEC, we saw him partnering indeed with Mem289, who also struggled with these cars today, and the Bentley Speed 8 during the core WEC. So they had some quite successful runs, and I believe won several rounds as a duo. So yeah, certainly they're not strangers to high downforce cars, but certainly it does appear that these machines just aren't quite to those drivers' styles.
Yep, so not being the best of run then for Future F1. Definitely still be interesting to see how how he could do in this one. He has dropped down behind RS. In fact, he's quite a considerable distance behind RS. But if either of these drivers were to strike into trouble, then he could still grab perhaps a second place here today, as long as he keeps his head down and hopes for a mistake. Glenhouse, just as you said, John, hasn't really shown his form so far in the Super GT Championship. It's not really been his best series. He got a second place at. Oh no, hang on. He finished in fourth position in the first race, did not finish in round 2, did not start the race in round number 3. He did pick up a second in round 4, but let's just sort downhill from there. He picked up a fifth position even in round number 5, a fifth position in round and didn't finish in round 6. So again, it's not really been the front running form that we expected. Glenhouse, he's had a bit of a bad run of things during the Super GT Championship, and he's on course again for a fourth here. So he's got himself another sort of 5 points finish in this one, which will actually put him above RCB in the final standings, put him up into fourth position. But Future F1, let's try and see where he'll finish. So Future F1 in third position, I'll give him 6 points. So he'll actually jump up in front of 5 Ziggin if he stays.
Double points, Luke, so I'll give him 12 points.
Where he is, yes, he will. I keep forgetting the double points, so apologies for that. So Future F1 will jump up to 52 points, so he will be ahead of 5 Ziggin by 7 points.
Luke, but it looks like Glenn's just spun right in front of Future F1. I think the American just managed to slide around the outside of him, but yes, certainly as we mentioned, that Lexus not looking good in the wet.
Yep, so Glenhouse again, still having some issues here today, still spinning off in places, but yeah, so Glenhouse where he stands, he will jump up past RCB into fourth position. Future F1 will jump up to second in the table on points, just as long as TNR Rebellion stands at the top of the table. So 5 Ziggin, although he's had 2 race victories here today, it just shows how important missing a double race, kind of a double points race, can mean to your chance Not only will he not win the championship, but even drop down into third position, which has definitely not been reflective of Five Ziggen's form throughout the course of the season. His only dodgy result was a sixth place finish at round number 4, but at round number 5 even. But apart from that, he's had some consistent. In fact, he's finished on the podium in all but one race so far this season. So Five Ziggen really dominating the core Super GT Championship. But then so was TNR Rebellion. He's picked up one race victory. He's picked himself three second place finishes, one third place finish, and then 2 fourths. So in fact, Rebellion has also had himself a pretty dominant campaign. So really, the championship should be between Rebellion or Five Ziggen, but of course the double points has kind of enabled Five Ziggen to not really be able to mount a challenge for this championship here today. TNR Rebellion heading through turn number 14, up then towards turn number 15. It'll be interesting to see what will happen during the second half of the race, of course. We've had it all in terms of the races concerned. We've had contact, we've had dry conditions turn into wet weather conditions. We've had TNR Rebellion look as if his race was over, to some the main man, unfortunately leading the way here as he head down into turn number 1 once again. He's got about half a lap advantage now over RS96, and just as long as he stays here and keeps his car peeled to that race circuit, then it seems that he can do no more wrong here and be able to hold off and be able to seal this championship. Still got 1 hour and 25 minutes in the GT finale. TNR Rebellion, in fact, just got a bit of grass there as he came down the hill into turn number 5 for the 46th lap, on course to win the 2015 championship, just as long as he keeps it on circuit and doesn't fall into disconnection issue. But of course, that's not the main attraction for many of these drivers. We've still got the main event taking place this afternoon, the core Nurburgring 24 hours, live stream live from 2:45 this afternoon, with the race beginning at 3 o'clock this afternoon. So we've got the race going on, of course, for 24 hours. We've got full commentary, of course, via YouTube of the live stream of that one. So make sure that you stay tuned to the YouTube channel for that one. And just as we look now, there is Glenhouse again going very slowly. So again, some more contact there for Glenhouse, some more issues for Glenhouse. Not really being the best of races for him so far. And again, the Schumacher S's proving to be downfall. But yet the Nurburgring 24 hours coming up again for you. 2:45 is when the YouTube begins via the Core TV page. We've also got the race, the green flag, beginning at 3 o'clock UK time. In that one, Poland 24 line up on pole position for the big race this afternoon. They were dominant throughout the core VLN and will for that lineup on pole position for this afternoon's race. However, reigning champions of that Concrete Climax Racing line up a bit further behind after not really being too competitive during the VLN. Some disconnection issues being their downfall. But one team to watch this afternoon is, of course, the Reefer Racing team. Glenhouse not having the best of run here during the Super GT, but he will be starting. Well, not starting, but his team will be lining up second on the grid for that VLN event. A win in the first round of the VLN, a second in the second round of the VLN, put that team second on the grid for this afternoon's race. So they're definitely a team to watch out for. Concrete Climax will beginning the race in 8th position, disqualified from the first 2 races, but a win in the 3rd race has shown that they are definitely there to show some form during the VLN during the 24 this afternoon.
Yes, indeed, Luke.
Yeah.
Riding on board with Rebellion again as he comes down the hill towards the hairpin at the very bottom of the circuit. Once again, very sort of stabby approach to that. Generally, we've seen drivers try and be as smooth as possible on the throttle, but certainly Rebellion just seem to be very sort of on I can't think of a better word other than stabby with it, as he just seems to be trying to get the nose to just turn in that little bit more by just making the car that little bit more unstable. I guess it's yes, potentially a lot faster, but certainly does promote that instability in the car, so it could well mean that he's really running a lot of risk towards the end of the race, but I guess we'll have to see if he can manage to keep up his run so far.
Yeah, TNR Rebellion still out front. It seems really that TNR Rebellion can't do much wrong here today. He's not really made too many mistakes. In sort of where Future F1 and Glenhouse have been banging into walls and spinning in places, and even RS has had his sort of fair share of issues. TNR Rebellion hasn't really sort of run into many. Just kept his own race. He's got himself into that sort of rhythm now, and he's been able to just control the race from there.
Yes, indeed, and let's not forget the positive effect on the driver's psychology that having the race lead does lead to. It just means that he's that little bit more comfortable in the car, just that little bit easier for him really to just look at the gap, say, right, I don't need to push that hard, I can just control myself and just uh, drive within my limits, whereas drivers like RS who know that they've got all that time to make up, probably I think it's about a minute and a half now, a minute and 4 seconds to TNR Rebellion ahead of him to make up. It just means that he has
Yeah,
in the back of
half a
his
lap,
mind
isn't
that
it,
he just
really?
has to push that little bit harder and make sure that he's quicker, and that's where the mistakes come from.
Yeah, but is our RS actually closing up on TNR Rebellion, or has that gap stayed pretty much the same throughout the last half an hour or so?
I think it's maintained roughly the same. As we look at the two last laps, they are almost identical, with RS just being about, in fact, yeah, half a tenth faster than TNR Rebellion there. So clearly two very equally matched drivers, and it is just mistakes that have cost RS from really being up there at the front.
Well, we've seen the drivers making mistakes, but we haven't seen TNR Rebellion making mistakes. So does that perhaps show that TNR Rebellion perhaps is due a mistake, so to say, John? Perhaps he's due a mistake at the Schumacher SS, and perhaps he might run into those mistakes later on during the race, which could then bring RS back into contention.
I'm glad that you're not only refusing to accept the superstition of the commentator's curse, but fully inviting it there, Luke. That was, but yes, I think that possibly you could be right in that uh, he has managed to keep himself reasonably mistake-free. But I think that possibly if you manage to do that, then so long as you can avoid complacency, then it actually works in your benefit to not have made mistakes, because that you then don't feel the need to make up for them, which means you can drive a lot more within yourself and within your limits, compared to uh, RS, who, as we mentioned, has made mistakes and does have to make up that gap. And having said that, he's now gained the best part of 4 seconds in a lap, it would appear. So clearly he is on the charge, and with an hour and 20 to go, it may not actually be entirely safe for Rebellion if RS can keep it up.
Yeah, definitely be interesting to see if he can do that. Still got 1 hour 20 minutes to go in this race. It's still a long time for things to sort of fully develop and work their way up. If RS is still sort of closing that gap, as you said, he's pulled that gap down to 1 minute 0.8 now, so he's closed 3 seconds or so in the last 2 minutes. So with there being an hour or so left, he could perhaps still close that gap. He just done a 2:13.4 compared to TNR Rebellion's 2:15.6, so he's almost close 2 seconds on that lap. So yeah, John, he could perhaps close that gap.
Indeed he could. Future F1 sadly seems to just be going, uh, well, he seems to be in a race pretty much on his own at the moment, lapping in about the 220s.
Well, in fact, we've just seen a photo come through of future F1 there, driving by himself in his front room. They're not really having the best run of it so far.
No, they are indeed not, and certainly will have to hope that INF can produce a better performance in their VLN car, or sorry, Nurburgring 24 car. Got me doing it too now, Luke. But yes, we've seen the Z4 possibly not as comfortable as some of the other cars in the wet, and the same goes for the Green Hill Heathens, who are also in the BMW, so that will be an interesting thing to keep track of. But yes, looking back at this race, he has actually just done a 2:16, so perhaps I was being overly judgmental and it was just a mistake that led him to a slower lap. But yes, certainly he doesn't seem to be challenging the pace of the leaders at all at the moment. So yes, likely that without further mistakes from his opposition ahead of him, he is just going to have to settle for third in this one.
Yep, future F1. He's still. Well, look back to second place there, John. That's another 2 seconds pulled out there for RS. So he's definitely closing up on TNR Rebellion, and that gap now down to 57.9. But with 1 hour 15 minutes, if he closes up 2 seconds a lap, and we've got 1 hour left, will that be enough to close up that gap?
Let's see if he's got about 60 seconds to make up and he's making 2 seconds a lap. Then, yeah, if the lap is about 2 minutes, then he will indeed catch him by the end of the race.
Oh, so the end of the race might not be predicted just yet. TNR Rebellion has now got future F1 right in front of him, so this is going to just add to his troubles. He knows he's got RS behind him now chasing, and now future F1 is being a bit pedantic here. He's not exactly letting TNR Rebellion just go straight past, is he?
Well, yes, this may actually be the explanation for TNR's lack of pace over the last few laps, is just because driving in the draft, and especially with how little grip they've got from the tyres at the moment, it will be severely hampering his performance driving in
Well,
the
yeah.
wake of future F1's car. So
Well, if future F1 is getting the blue flags, then could he find himself on the end of a steward's inquiry towards the end of this race as well?
he may well do. At this moment in time, I wouldn't have thought that Rebellion is quite close enough to really justify the blue flags at the moment, just because he's not really had the opportunity to get past, because future F1 seems to be roughly matching his performance. Obviously, this may be not quite accurate, as we see Rebellion fishtailing quite badly down the start-finish straight. So perhaps it's, as we see his rear tyres have worn out. Usually we don't actually see any wear coming on these wet weather tyres before the fuel tank is out, so it could well be that he has just burnt up his rear tyres. As we mentioned before, he does have a very aggressive throttle trace while driving in these conditions, so it could well be that he's just used the best of the tyres, and that's what's really hurting him at the moment.
Well, it's not been the best of run really for future F1 today, and he's not doing himself favours really by keeping TNR Rebellion so close to him. We've seen before that future F1 has spun on some occasions and caused incidents between cars. So a spin now by future F1 right in front of TNR Rebellion could force contact, could force a pit stop, and that's perhaps where these drivers will start to find themselves in further issues, and that could be perhaps what opens the door back up to RS. But definitely speculating a bit too much here. TNR Rebellion, I'm sure, will just want to hold back a bit now because he knows that contact could be a possibility. So by holding back, allowing future F1 to perhaps make another mistake and then TNR Rebellion to slot through that way would perhaps be a bit more favourable for TNR Rebellion than to just go out for a move, try and overtake him on circuit and then leave himself with more damage for that car, and could perhaps then bring RS firmly back into contention.
It could indeed, but yes, watching his car and the way it's moving, I would be very surprised if we don't see Rebellion coming into the pit lane reasonably soon. Obviously, looking at his fuel, it looks like he might have to anyway, but certainly, ooh, a big moment for him going through that very high-speed kink in the back straight. Certainly, I have a feeling that, yeah, Rebellion's car is not particularly easy to drive at the moment, and will he peel off into the pit lane? Yeah, he has indeed. So yes, a big opportunity for RS here to make up some significant ground, since as we look back we can see that the Lexus has looked after its tyres a lot better. So perhaps this
TNR
is,
Rebellion's in the pits, so is that a scheduled pit stop there?
well, as I was just mentioning it out, it seems as though he's just been a lot more aggressive on his tyres than RS has. Because, yeah, certainly, usually in the wet we see the cars manage to use up their fuel tank before they use up their tyres. But this doesn't seem to be the case with Rebellion, and this is probably where all of RS's time is coming from.
Yep. So as ROS now finds his way up now towards turn number 13 and turn number 14, up now towards the final corner at turn number 15, he'll be closer to TNR Rebellion, but of course ROS will have to make another stop at some point, whereas TNR Rebellion, if he keeps whole now with his tyres, he might be able to run to the end of the race, and even if he can't, he's got such a considerable gap that he can afford to sort of make more pit stops and keep coming in as many times as need be, because he's got such a considerable gap. But of course, being held up by future F1 by making that pit stop is getting himself kind of away from that situation. He can now focus on putting in the lap times and trying to extend that gap again between himself and RS for the race lead. Right then, unfortunately, real world interventions has mean that I have to leave the commentary box for the time being, but don't forget to tune in to the Nurburgring 24 hours. Not long to go now. It kicks off 2:45 on the live stream. The race beginning at 3 o'clock this afternoon. The race with full commentary, of course. We've got the main man for pretty much, Mr. Adam Weller, in the commentary box from 2:45 alongside Tom Hughes and Adam Johnson for full commentary of that beginning at 3 o'clock. And so I'll be back with you on the live stream via YouTube at 8:30 this evening to take you through the night shift as well. Thank you very much, John, for having me this morning, and thank you to the core fans at home as well. We'll leave you in the competent hands of John Bowes now for the final 1 hour of this core Super Duty finale.
Yes, thank you very much, Luke. That was, yes, one of my helpful TCR compatriots there, just chiming in. And yes, it's been good having you, and thank you for your efforts. So back to
Thank
the
you very
lead
much.
of the race. We have TNR Rebellion on a brand new set of tyres and possibly fuel to the end, I believe. Or at least I'd be surprised if he isn't. With just under an hour and 10 minutes to go, we've had, or just about to see the second hour of racing completed, and TNR Rebellion running slightly wide. It looks like, yes, indeed, running slightly wide into turn one. Obviously, not quite as comfortable on those new tyres as he was. RS96, the real gainer from this situation at this moment in time, and possibly if we look at the time screen, it's skewed by the fact that Rebellion has just been through the pits. But yes, certainly RS still pulling very quick laps. Usual pace we've seen from Rebellion is about 2:14s, 2:15s, so a 2:11 is stunning pace from the German driver, and certainly that 21-second gap looks set to fall down very quickly. Obviously RS will need to stop for fuel at some point in the next hour, so it does mean that Rebellion could get a break there if he is fuel to the end, but having looked at his fuel figures, I think that he may also need to dip in. Looking further down the field, Future F1, who, as been mentioned several times, was the only real championship contender coming into this race against TNR Rebellion, has unfortunately not been able to reproduce his successes at Tsukuba in the rain, and has really struggled with that HSV to match the pace of the two leading cars. Well, certainly that's not the situation that he really wanted to be in, but it does mean that he will uh, comfortably take second position in the championship overall if the results stay as they are. due to Fleischzigen's absence. It really is a shame that the TNR driver couldn't make it, but yes, unfortunately due to its position as the support race for the N24, the earlier start time has meant that some of the drivers have had to miss out on the title defence. Similarly in GT300, all of the championship contenders have missed out, but with Etik's absence, or failure to score I should say, from round 6, it does mean that he really had quite the deficit to TNR Philo anyway. So while it is a bit of a shame, it's not entirely unforeseeable that even if Etik had appeared, or had Philo appeared as well, that they wouldn't have managed to actually undo their positions. Glenn Alls in the black Lexus SC430 has not had a fantastic race. He really has struggled in this car, and especially in the wet weather it just does not look like a comfortable car to drive. It's likely that given his status as one of the only two-man teams in the Core N24 that he's been spending more time in the, it has to be said, far heavier, far less cornering focused, but incredibly fast in a straight line GT Academy GTR that he will be piloting this afternoon, as he has a slight, and no, it's a spin, and he heads towards the inside of the circuit, just managing to keep it out the wall. But yes, a testament, as we said, struggling in these conditions. Finally, the only runner that we have in GT300 this race, GTB Bambi, in that Subaru Impreza, really enjoying these conditions in that wonderful car, and yes, seemingly doing his best to hoon with all his might, and yes, get the tail out as frequently as possible in that GT300 car. So back up with, or looking at the timing screen, we see that the gap has shrunk from 20 seconds down to about 15 seconds between the two leaders. So RS is really on the charge now, and it seems that Rebellion has no answer, managing only 2:14s compared to RS's 2:12. So really in trouble for TNR Rebellion, and sure to have a battle within the next 7 laps by the looks of the rate at which the German driver is gaining. So even after 2 hours gone, there is still spectacle to be had in this race, and certainly a good sign for the amount of action we can expect to see in the N24 itself, which will be, as we mentioned, the green flag will be flying at 3 PM British time, and with the live coverage starting at 2:45. Don't forget that in the meantime you can watch the pre-season review of the car selection series and subsequent VLN races that decided the car selection order and then qualifying positions for the teams, with plenty of racing action to be had when the initial GT4 machinery used in the car selection series, and then the SP9 cars used in the VLN, that really has provided us with some fantastic racing so far. So yes, as RS continues to So, looking back at the race leader TNR Rebellion, as we do in fact see RS having quite a significant fishtail just further up the road. So perhaps not quite as easy as previously anticipated, and his fuel needle is dipping ever lower towards that red marker. Surely he will need to be coming into the pit lane sooner rather than later. In order to make it to the end. I believe these cars have just over an hour's endurance with a full tank, so he should comfortably be able to make it to the end from here. Obviously the real question is whether the drivers feel that the rain will continue, in which case they can afford to just fill up the tank and go, but if they will need to make a subsequent stop due to the track drying out, it could well mean that they, or it will almost certainly mean they have to make another stop towards the end. But yes, possibly this, in fact, having said that, RS has just set their 210 in the complete wet, so a really stunning time from the Lexus there, really taking time out of TNR Rebellion hand over fist, it would seem. So yes, a really strong drive there from RS, although a slow lap there from the German. As we said, he did seem to have a bit of difficulty coming out of the main complex. Yeah, out of turns 3 and 4, so perhaps that's just where he was losing that time. Certainly we expected him to be caught up with TNR Rebellion at about lap sorry, let me just remember when I said it, probably about lap 65, possibly a bit earlier than that. So yes, this is a gap that really is one to watch for the overall race lead now. So yes, we rejoin the action watching GT Bambi in that GT300 Subaru, pretty much managing to hang the tail out through every single corner so far. So yes, some exuberant driver from the American, and certainly even if he doesn't have competitors to race against, he can. Right. So yes, further towards the front of the field we have TNR Rebellion attempting to lap future F1 again. As we saw previously, TNR Rebellion on his older tyres really struggled to get around the HSV of future, but on fresher rubber it would appear that TNR Rebellion has got the pace again, having made up the best part of pit stop now on the HSV ahead of him. Certainly we've seen that his previous pace has been a lot faster, as both cars getting quite sideways there. It surely won't be long before Rebellion can make a move. Riding on board, we have a chance to see just how little vision the drivers actually have while running in the wet. That rooster tail spray really does compromise what we drive, as you can see, as Rebellion trying to make it around. As Rebellion attempting to make it around the outside there, but just struggling to, or being slightly cautious to let Future F1 through, but he has indeed made it now, and is pulling away comfortably. So one obstacle down, but Future F1 will have to be passed by RS as well, although I believe, looking at the fuel gauge, that the German driver is going to have to pull into the pit lane in the next few laps to fuel his car towards the end of the race. Certainly this could well be his last stop if the rain continues, and he has indeed pulled into the pit lane. So this could be RS's last stop, with Rebellion also reasonably light on fuel, it has to be said, so clearly banking on having to make another stop anyway. Perhaps he has just come to accept that with his driving style he just can't make these rain tyres last as long as the Lexus driver behind him. This could well be a key factor, given that the gap was only about 20 seconds, and as we know, an extra stop costs about 30 at this circuit, so yeah, depending on how much RS can really gain, it could well mean that Rebellion has quite the fight on his hands towards the end of the race. So yes, RS has returned to the circuit, and as we saw, the gap has just risen from 8 seconds to 35. So losing 23 seconds there in the pit lane. RS surely now fueled to the end of the race, I would assume, and yes, certainly he will be looking to now just work away at that gap and see what he can do to get to DNR Rebellion. Given that he has previously been closing at upwards of 2 seconds a lap, it shouldn't actually be too long before he's back up there with about 15 laps, which will be about half an hour's time. So with 25 minutes to go, there could well be a huge fight towards the end of the race. But obviously it depends if TNR Rebellion does have to come back into the pit lane or not. As we see the American driver having a big slide coming off of the final corner. He really is going for it with all his might, it would seem. Though, it has to be said, even his enthusiasm and urgency, he is still managing to hit pretty much every apex, so clearly driving very well. But the real question is whether that's enough to, well, I say that he is just running incredibly wide through turn 3, but just keeping things nice and tidy through turn 4. Riding on board briefly, as we'll see him passing through the 6-mile time gap and starting to descend down the hill through his pair of S-bends. Again, keeping the short shifting very early there, just to keep control of the turbo surge. Certainly, it does seem as though he is in trouble as far as the lap time goes, as he brakes fairly there and has indeed run slightly wide at the hairpin. It does seem as though Rebellion is starting to push a little bit harder than he can really afford to at this moment. Cleverly pointing out in the chat that indeed, given that the car was light on fuel towards the end of the stint, but will be carrying around the better part of about 60 kilos, or RS may not be able to match his previous lap times, but I believe that the 2 seconds a lap was being achieved when the two got, or he and TNR Rebellion were on fairly similar fuel loads before, so I think he should still be well on for catching up to TNR Rebellion. The real question then being if he can manage to get the pass done, or if there's going to be a good fight. So we're just getting a few comments over the sound, so perhaps adjusting that might lead to a so going into the final hairpin now. RS very tidy on the apex and nice smooth throttle inputs compared to TNR, or what we've seen from TNR really instead, winding back up the hill through the Schumacher S's, no troubles for him there, although back way off the throttle to keep the back of the car in control, fairly squirmy onto the brakes into turn 10, but still all well in hand, clipping the apex nicely. Charging back down the hill or the back straights, clipping that apex nicely and heading up into the very tight chicane. Hard on the brakes, but the car nicely in control now, as TNR Rebellion has just pulled into the pit lane, I believe. So I don't know if that was contact. GTP Bambi is right in there with him, but it would seem as though this could be an opportunity for TNR Rebellion to, oh sorry, RS to take the race lead. And indeed, RS has just taken the lead. Unfortunately, this has somewhat robbed us of what could have been a very exciting fight for the lead of the race, but it will be fascinating to see whether TNR Rebellion can now do anything with those new tyres, or whether RS will have similar mistakes to his earlier performance, and whether this will lead to further championship or battling for the lead of the race, albeit the championship battle seemingly fairly well decided at this moment in time. Speaking of the championship battle, looking down at future F1's HSV, this is the only car that can really challenge TNR Rebellion for the overall, or the overall prize now. But in order to do so, he would have to win the race and Rebellion come last in class, or failing that, Rebellion to not score, which would mean a either disconnects now, so he completes less than 70% of the laps, or a disqualification. But it seems very unlikely that that will be happening at this moment in time. Certainly, I think that future F1 just simply hasn't had the time to prepare, and given that he is just about to embark on his first ever Nurburgring 24 Hours with the Inferno Racing team, well, it wouldn't surprise me at all if they'd spent most of their time working on the setup for that car instead of him focusing on his Super GT efforts. Indeed, RCB99, who also competes in both the INF racing team and in fact will be starting for the INF racing team this afternoon, and also competes in this championship in the GTR and has had two very impressive results at round 5 and round 6. I believe the only 2 rounds he's competed in the second half of the championship, which he won both of. He is surely focusing all of his attentions on getting that Z4 running absolutely perfectly for the start at 3 o'clock. Yes. Soon we now have RS about to take his turn at trying to get past Future F1 in that HSV. A feat that has proved slightly difficult at times with TNR Rebellion on his worn out tyres, but certainly with a set of reasonably new tyres for RS and I believe a set of fairly old tyres for Future, it shouldn't prove too much of a challenge. Obviously that pit stop has sent TNR Rebellion back behind this HSV again, so that's something he'll have to try and do again at some point. But at this moment in time it seems that RS has got this well in hand as he's closing up behind Future at a fast rate, to say the least, and indeed just every corner seems to be taking invisible distance out of the driver ahead of him. So you can just see there that the difference as far as laps or lines go is just RS's car is clearly far more comfortable than Future's, as he's able to just really turn the car into the apex and then hold that line, whereas Future's car is scrolling all over the place, and he is indeed being let through very easily by the American driver. TNR Rebellion is still with his usual antics of sliding through every single corner, it would seem. It's a very enthusiastic driving from the American there. But yes, it seems as though Rebellion is keeping things reasonably in check and just keeping himself to himself. Obviously, while the race lead is a nice thing to have, the bigger picture here is the championship result, and as we've discussed, all he needs to do, so long as Future stays in this position, is complete 70% distance, which he looks well set to do. And indeed, with their current pace, with about 40 minutes to go, means there's about 20 laps left. which means that he will have already completed 70% distance. At this moment in time, I believe, obviously if it dries out that could change as the car will be going around the circuit faster, but so far it seems as though it is remaining, yes, reasonably river-like, as Rebellion again sliding the tail out through turns 3 and 4. Off the circuit we actually have future F1, so the Schumacher S is claiming another victim. That high speed corner really area where a tiniest mistake gets punished, as the cars tend to snap back on you as soon as a small slide occurs. Certainly we've seen all but TNR Rebellion, I believe, headed off the circuit there through similar seeming or similar looking accidents. But Future F1 seems to have got away without damage there, but as the fuel meter falls ever lower, I imagine he'll be headed into the pits at some point soon, but not this lap it would appear. Just checking on the 4th place runner Glenn Alves, he's still circulating, still going for it, and reasonable amount of fuel in the car, although I would be surprised if he can make it to the end on that. Certainly this has not quite been Glenn's race, and he has just been trying to, or seemingly struggling to get to grips with this car, and a lack of rear downforce perhaps, just not making it ideal and great. Let's just ride on board with the race leader and see what he can do throughout this, through these treacherous conditions around this challenging circuit. After the brief interlude, we return to see Future F1 scything through the Schumacher S's in that glorious sounding HSV. RS96 chasing down, I believe that's Glenn Alves in the fellow Lexus. Indeed it is. Trying to put another lap on his on the car of the same mark. Obviously, there are no teams, but these two have helpfully decided that they were going to run one black and one white, which I guess makes it easy to identify which car is which compared to some other cars we've seen. As RS getting very squiggly just out of the Schumacher S's on the curbs there. Testament to his quick reactions and overall driving prowess that he managed to stop that becoming a real issue. Yeah, slowly working his way back up towards the Scotsman's car as Future F1 has just pulled into the pit lane, I assume for a fuel stop. RS96, as we see here, should be well able to go to the end of the race, and TNR Rebellion, who's also got plenty of fuel to make it to the end, so no difficulties there. Future F1 just leaving the pit lane now, but not soon enough to avoid going a lap down to these two. Fortunately for him, he had a lap on Glenn Alves in that Lexus anyway, so he hasn't lost a position there. So, but surely he will be looking to have a bit of racing going on here, as we do for the first time in a while have three cars all fairly close to each other on circuit, so this could prove or provide a little bit of entertainment. While Glenn is obliged to move out of the way, he doesn't have to until it's clear that RS is well and truly up behind him. So there could be a little bit of racing going on here, as both Lexuses getting very sideways on the entrance to that corner, and Glenn, I believe, has just spun the car. So yes, he's gone through, I believe that's turn 5 and 6, just on the exit of 6, getting slightly too careless on the curb and spinning towards the inside of the circuit, fortunately allowing Future F1 to get around the outside fairly comfortably. Future F1 then having another incident of his own through the Schumacher S's, allowing Glenn Alves to catch him back up and pass him again easily. So Glenn Alves and Future F1, I believe, are now on the same lap. So long as the Scotsman can work his way all the way around, he will be able to unlap himself. TNR Rebellion, the only other car bar RS on the lead lap, and about 45 seconds behind the German driver. Clearly he just hasn't had the pace in the wet to match the Lexus ahead of him, as RS has frequently been pulling sort of 210s and 211s, whereas TNR Rebellion has really struggled to get below 214s. So a true testament to just how well set up that Lexus was in RS's hands. Future F1 now chasing down Glenn Alves again as he makes his, or having recovered. It would appear that Glenn's car may have a slight amount of damage as it's slightly squirrely down the back straight, but it could well be that that was just the poor condition getting the better of his car slightly, as he's now had another spin into the entry of turn 3. So yes, possibly not a particularly healthy car there, as yeah, certainly the possibly a slightly heavy right foot there, just leading the car to spear off in the wrong direction there onto the entrance of turn 4. So hope that he has better luck later in the afternoon, in the, or when he takes charge of the Reaper Racing Nissan Academy GTR, which will be starting on the front row of the grid in second place for the 2015 core Nurburgring 24-hour race on Gran Turismo. So charging up through the Schumacher S's that have caused so many of the drivers so many difficulties through this race. Unfortunately, RS96, who had his fair number of troubles early on through there, has managed to get back in his managed to sort of get himself under control, and since then has been pretty much flawless throughout the or in these conditions. TNR Rebellion, who has managed to avoid having any incidences through there, just seemingly unable to match his overall speed. So as they charge across the laps, it starts the 73rd racing lap. Obviously we had the one pace lap, which is why the lap counter reads 74. But yes, these two cars really fairly well matched. Just dicing with each other, and while they're not officially racing, Glenn will be trying to get back on the lead lap, and it is within his rights to do so, to battle past Future F1 if he can. Obviously, since Future F1 is a lap ahead, he is also well within his rights to defend against such an action. However, since championship results are on the line, in fact, I believe that Future F1 may actually have an amount of security. Yes, he's got a 40 or a 18-point gap back to RCB 99, who isn't in attendance. His closest rival, who is actually here, or his closest following rival, who is actually here, is in fact Glenn Ells, with whom he is dicing now. So perhaps just a bit of pride coming into play here in this battle, which is, as I said, not for position, but just Glenn Ells is a lap down, and running very wide into turn 11, and has a spin on the apex, or on the grass there. As a surprise or moment, we have RS in the pit lane. I believe that must be for fuel, because I had originally thought he had enough fuel to go to the end, but clearly I was incorrect in this assumption. TNR Rebellion was about 40 seconds behind, so he should still, or RS should be able to make it out ahead of the 350Z, but it will mean that there will only be about 15 to 20 seconds worth of gap by the time this is all said and done, so it could well be a final spark for TNR Rebellion's charge. As no, in fact, Rebellion has come into the pit lane as well, despite having plenty of fuel, so I'm unsure what's happening there. Yeah, that's very bizarre for the TNR driver there, but RS has indeed made it back out onto the circuit. Just ahead of Glenn Ells, it would seem. So, yes, he's fallen behind Future F1 again. So, we'll have that gap to make back up. I think TNR Rebellion may actually be retiring. No, he's pulling back out of the pit lane, I believe. Yes, that was a confusion with GTP Bambi, who I think, being the only runner in GT300, is possibly retiring the car for a brief period, just to get some rest while he can. Meanwhile, RS has run off the circuit at the bottom of the hill, just slightly too exuberant or enthusiastic into that braking zone. They're coming across Future F1, who is sideways on the circuit. Ooh, but both cars managing to avoid the American driver who was on the outside of the circuit during that high-speed section through the Schumacher S. So RS now plenty of open track ahead of him to just continue pulling away his lead. Meanwhile, in second place, TNR Rebellion is just coming out of the hairpin. Ooh, running slightly carelessly over the curb there, but not losing too much time from it, managing to control the mistake. So now heading up to the turn 10 and 11. The circuit is mostly comprised of sort of S-bends, and yes, that's one of the larger ones with plenty of runoff at turn 10. Meanwhile, towards the front of the field, it seems that RS is enjoying. In fact, no, RS has just spun out of turn 4, and Glenn has had a similar accident. But I don't know if that was a sign of contact or not. The two Lexus drivers seemingly spinning in tandem there, but Future F1 managing to make it through the gap safely, it would appear. Meanwhile, TNR Rebellion running well, so perhaps this is a sign that RS's attention is just starting to slip, and with 10 minutes to go, or 11 minutes 30 seconds to go, it's not entirely safe for the German driver at this moment in time, and he could well get caught up if he doesn't manage to get back in the groove and maintain his focus, just because a single big accident here early in the lap could well cost him severely. Just as we look back, we see Glenn Allen's having another spin through the turn 10 and 11 section. Given his position, I would assume that was again getting careless on the grass there. Fortunately, damage seems to have been avoided, but certainly fairly close running there. RS has managed to make it past Future F1, so I didn't see if there was an incident for the American driver there, but he does seem to have yielded that position without too much difficulty for the Lexus. Meanwhile, we've heard that GTV Bambi has indeed retired the car for the moment, so apparently he's got 2 more races to do today, so very busy day for the only GT3 runner today, so given that he will, without a shadow of a doubt, take the honours in the class today, it's understandable that he's decided to call it a day. Meanwhile, Glenn still struggling with that Lexus as he goes through the turn 3 and 4 complex. Mind you, we've also just seen TNR Rebellion having what looked like it could have been an off out of turn 1. That's a very difficult section to get right, just because the amount of gradient change as well as the tightness of the corner means that it's very easy to spin up the rear wheels there, and especially in conditions such as these. You have to be exceptionally careful to make it through there without having an incident. Meanwhile, it does seem that RS is now stretching his legs again and has got back in the groove, so really it is his race to lose at this moment in time with only 8 minutes and 45 seconds to go. There is plenty of there's plenty of time for mistakes to be made, but possibly not enough time for Rebellion to start making a difference on that gap by himself. Sweeping up through the Schumacher S's, we see big twitch from TNR Rebellion there. So yes, certainly we've seen that his style has been particularly stabby on the throttle at times, and I imagine that's just a testament to that style. Meanwhile, looking at RS, the leader, just coming into turn 1, we've seen him being far smoother on the throttle, and that's been rewarded with, as we've seen, sort of a good couple of seconds a lap pace around of what has to be said a fairly short circuit. We've seen in the VLN, which is the support series or the build-up series for the N24, which will take place later this afternoon, that indeed the or that sort of difference in lap time is often seen throughout the lap, and sort of slightly higher than that as well, sort of 3 or 4 seconds a lap quite easily, but obviously that's over an 8-minute lap as opposed to the 2-minute lap here, so this is just a real testament to just how well RS is driving in that Lexus. So with just under 7 minutes to go, RS is leading by a comfortable margin from TNR Rebellion. He also has a lap's lead over Future F1 and Glenelg's again being a lap back from the HSV. GTP Bambi being the only GT300 car, and as such has retired to the pit lane at this moment in time, having provided us with some fairly entertaining racing up until this point. So as we watch RS's car navigate that very tight chicane, nicely clipping each of the curbs, not running too high over the exit curbing there. He really has been a textbook drive in the second half of the race for this driver. Over the first half saw him struggling slightly. Initially having a very good start in the struggling slightly on the start and getting passed by Future F1 early on. He then drove very well in the drive, catching up and taking the lead from TNR Rebellion, who had managed to stretch out quite a distance initially. The rain then started to come down, which saw mistakes from RS, costing quite a long distance, and saw him fall occasionally even as low as third behind both TNR Rebellion and Future F1, but since then RS has slowly managed to get his hold himself back and drive within himself, and since then has really upped his pace and is set to catch TNR Rebellion on merit, but fortunately for him got the luck of the pit stops and managed to make it past while TNR Rebellion was coming into the pit. As final strategy, or surprise as far as strategy went for RS, it could have provided an opportunity for Rebellion, but he also came to the pit lanes for a reason we aren't entirely sure of, and so the gap has remained about 50 seconds between the two. Meanwhile, in third, Future F1 has had a reasonably quiet race, having had just not been able to reproduce the pace of the leading cars. he struggled somewhat in the dry, to gain it in the wet, just unable to really match their pace. And a brief contact with GTP Bambi in the GT300 class meant that he couldn't really capitalise on the mistakes of others earlier on either. He did manage to run briefly in second, getting a wonderful drive off the start, and indeed again during RS's incidents as the rain began to fall. Glenn Owls unfortunately just never really had luck on his side today, and has seemingly struggled a lot as far as his car's handling has gone. And yes, simply hasn't really been a particularly influential challenger today. Memento89, who briefly joined us for the start of the race, also seemed to struggle with pace at times, and yes, a final lack of preparation in that he didn't have any wet weather tyres meant that he had to retire the car early as the rain began to come down. Finally, GCP Bambi in the GT300 class has had a reasonably quiet race to himself. While he did have a brief incident with Future F1 as the American driver lost control of his car and span in front of Bambi, who was apparently unable to avoid him, meant that some contact occurred. It hasn't really had any effect on the race overall, and has just been a reasonably quiet drive for the American driver. So with 1 minute to go, if you're on the social media or listening in on YouTube, do feel free to get in touch with us and tell us your driver of the race. For me, I have to say it's probably got to be this guy here, RS96, just because in spite of his difficulties he did manage to get back on top of his drive and yes, overcome what he was struggling with, and really show us what he's got and make it back towards the front of the field. Having said that, he just has a slight spin into turn 1, but yeah, other than that, I think he's had a really fantastic drive, and just the speed that he's managing to pull is fairly impressive. So yes, as we enter the final minute of the race, and this will surely be the final lap that RS is on now. If you're looking for something else to do in the meantime, in the gap between Super GT finishing and Core N24 beginning, there is a highlight reel of the Core VLN and or CSS and VLN series appearing soon, which will allow, or which you can all watch and enjoy. And then of course we will be back with live commentary for the pace lap and driver interviews for the Core Nurburgring 24 Hours 2015 on Gran Turismo, powered by Aquila motorcars, or racing cars even, at 2:45 with the green flag flying at 3 PM British time. So be sure to join us for that. So coming into the final corner, RS, after what can only be described as a fairly dominant drive in the wet. As you see, the checkered flag waving and a fair amount of fishtailing through there, most of it seemingly intentional. Next across the line will be Glenn Owls in that Lexus, in 4th place, 2 laps down on the leader and a lap down on his nearest classmate Future F1. Yes, not a day to be remembered for Glenn as far as GT500 goes, but hopefully one to enjoy later. Future F1 now crossing line in third, a lap down on the leaders, but still a reasonable performance from him and enough to secure second overall in the championship with, or provisionally, finally, while he hasn't managed to reproduce the pace in to take the race victory, he will take the championship overall result without any form of stewarding mishap. TNR Rebellion crosses the line. 2015's Super GT champion in GT500. GTP Bambi slowly making his way around the circuit, having briefly retired the car, but now heading out just so he could take the green flag. We've seen some good driving from this American driver, and certainly an amount of sliding, as yes, nice, easily 30-degree drift there. And yes, flashing his lights as he comes across the line, a nice, strong result from the American driver. Right, that wraps up proceedings for the Core Super GT Championship. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have, and be sure to stick around for the Core Nurburgring 24 hours, which will be setting off soon. Well, that's 2:45 PM British time, and with the green flag flying at 3 PM. I've been John Bowes. I've been joined briefly or earlier on by Luke Chillingsworth, and we will see you later.